Takes a village.
Yeah.
The Subcommittee on Energy and Mineral Resources will come to order. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare recess of the subcommittee at any time under Committee Rule 4F. Any oral opening statements at hearings are limited to the chairman and the ranking minority member. I ask unanimous consent that the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Fallon, be allowed to participate in today's hearing. The gentleman from Nevada, Mr. Amodei, be allowed to participate in today's hearing. The gentleman from Montana, Mr. Downing, to be allowed to participate in today's hearing. Without objection, so ordered. I now recognize myself for an opening statement. From day one of his second term, President Trump has acted swiftly to put America on a path towards energy and mineral dominance. The bills we have before us today play a vital role in supporting this administration's efforts by codifying executive orders and making key legislative fixes needed to unlock our vast domestic resources. First, we have two bills geared towards unleashing coal on federal lands. As energy demands continue to grow at a record-breaking pace, increasing production of American coal is a logical solution that will provide reliable, affordable baseload power to areas of the country that need it the most, as well as our allies abroad. H.R. 1, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act signed into law by President Trump in July, delivered historic wins for domestic coal production. H.R. 280, introduced by Representative Hageman, would build upon these wins by undoing harmful actions taken by the Obama and Biden administrations as part of their, quote, war on coal, end quote. The bill would also codify key aspects of President Trump's executive order reinvigorating America's beautiful clean coal industry by creating certainty in the Department of the Interior's coal leasing process. H.R. 4068, introduced by Representatives Collins, also intends to fix duplicative coal permitting processes. This bill requires the Secretary of the Interior to identify all existing and potential categorical exclusions under NEPA, which would further the responsible production and export of domestic coal. Next, H.R. 1366, introduced by Representative Amodei, would confront a key issue related to mining claims on federal land. In May of 2022, the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit affirmed a lower court's decision revoking an approved mine plan for the Rosemont Copper Mine project in Arizona. Now referred to as the Rosemont decision, this determination upended decades of regulatory and legal precedent, requiring that operators must prove the existence of a commercially developable deposit on a claim before a plan of operations can be approved. This ruling puts the cart before the horse, and certain ancillary uses such as mill sites are a key factor in determining if a mineral deposit can be economically developed. H.R. 1366 would address this issue by creating a new kind of mill site that can be located within the boundaries of an approved mine plan of operations. Additionally, H.R. 1366 would establish an abandoned hard rock mine fund to assist with remediation efforts. Representative Amodei's bipartisan legislation would cement the Rosemont fix into law and provide certainty for project sponsors seeking to responsibly develop much-needed resources on our federal lands. Next, as deep-sea mining emerges as a frontier for securing additional critical minerals, we must consider how to responsibly access these resources while advancing broader solutions for American energy and mineral independence. H.R. 4018, introduced by Representative Ezell, takes the first step at advancing these efforts by codifying an executive order from President Trump to expand America's access to offshore critical minerals. Specifically, the bill would require the Departments of Commerce and the Interior to develop reasonable permitting processes for deep-sea mining, while also requiring the departments to develop a seabed mapping plan. Next, H.R. 3872, introduced by Representative Fallon, would amend the Mineral Leasing Act for acquired lands, clarifying that all lands acquired by the federal government are eligible to be considered for hard rock mineral leasing. The existing statute covers a wide range of resources, but leaves out hard rock minerals. As a result, acquired federal lands holding key resources, such as vast lithium deposits in Texas, have been effectively locked up. H.R. 3872 would provide a much-needed technical fix to this law, giving the Secretary of the Interior the authority to tap into our vast mineral wealth across all types of federal land. Lastly, my bill, H.R. 4090, would codify aspects of 3 executive orders relating to hard rock mining. First, This bill would mandate new studies on the cost of United States mineral import reliance, including from adversaries like Communist China. H.R. 4090 would also require the administration to expedite priority mining projects on federal lands, identify federal lands suitable for new mineral production, and accelerate geologic mapping efforts. Finally, this bill would direct the Secretary of the Interior to revise or rescind agency actions that hinder domestic mining, recommend changes to current law necessary to streamline mineral development, and conduct a nationwide review of state and local laws that impede mineral development. As someone who has long championed responsible mineral development in places like northern Minnesota, Minnesota's Duluth Complex, which is home to the largest untapped copper-nickel find in the entire world, I know how vital it is to secure reliable domestic sources of the minerals needed to power our 21st century economy and our national defense. After all, if it's not grown or if it's not mined, it doesn't exist. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses on these important bills and will now yield to the ranking member Ansari for her opening statement.
Thank you, Chair Stauber. We are here today to discuss 5 mining-related bills that cut the American people out of decisions in the name of, quote, streamlining. We can all agree that we need safe and reliable access to critical minerals for the clean energy economy, for national security, and for the growing needs of technology. And I'm happy to work across the aisle to build it. But unfortunately, the bills on today's agenda don't get us any closer to that goal. Starting with H.R. 1366, bipartisan negotiations have markedly improved the Mining Regulatory Clarity Act, but this bill still raises as many regulatory questions as it answers. H.R. 1490 rubber stamps President Trump's broad sweeping executive order repealing common sense mining regulations and gives the industry even more power over our public lands. But deregulation is not the answer here. Even the industry will tell you projects go most smoothly when there is community support. Cutting out that public input like this bill would do in the name of streamlining permitting does nothing but erode public trust and breed opposition. When community members can ask questions and have their concerns addressed, projects get better. But that's impossible if you make the public the enemy. H.R. 4018 does the same thing, but this time in the deep sea. The bill directs NOAA and BOEM to expedite the process for issuing deep sea mining permits, both in our jurisdiction and in international waters. This summer, the Trump administration issued a press release laying out new permitting procedures for deep sea mining, which eliminates entire steps from the leasing process, reduces environmental reviews, and limits public input. This is a risky new industry that could profoundly harm our fisheries and oceans. Its impacts aren't well studied. Deep sea mining needs more study and public scrutiny, not less. Trump's press release also excludes states and coastal governments from the decision-making process for deep sea mining by eliminating a key task force. Maybe that's because the Trump administration doesn't like what they're hearing from local governments. The administration is pushing forward with authorizing deep sea mining of American Samoa, even though the government has come out firmly against deep sea mining off of its shores and banned it in its territorial waters. But instead of listening to the American Samoan people's legitimate concerns about potential impacts on their fisheries, waters, economy, and culture, the Trump administration has decided to cut them out of the process. That's not streamlining, that's steamrolling. All coastal states, really all states, should be worried about the precedent that this sets. Equally concerning is this administration's move to unilaterally issue mining permits in international waters, which flies in the face of the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. This will not make us any safer or more secure. It will only alienate us further from our allies and allow rivals like China to take similar actions, a race to the bottom that makes the whole world the loser. H.R. 4018 would have Congress codify and legitimize this administration's reckless deep-sea mining moves. We need a whole-of-supply chain approach, from mining to processing to end use, to build truly secure and resilient mineral supply chains. We must consider public input and ensure the benefits of domestic mining stay local. That's not what these bills would do. Beyond critical minerals, the two coal bills on the agenda are trying to artificially prolong the life of an industry that is on life support, as market forces like cheap renewable energy are driving coal's decline. These bills remove agencies' discretion in approving leases and look for ways to exempt coal from environmental reviews for production and export. This isn't even about American energy. It's about billionaire coal barons who refuse to face the truth. I stand firmly with coal communities and understand that folks need jobs in a healthy economy, but making false promises about coal coming back does not help. There are better, proven ways to build out American energy and secure our critical mineral supply chains in ways that are not just affordable and reliable, but good for people, our environment, and the climate. I look forward to hearing from Dr. Steve Feldges, an experienced former Interior official who also spent several years serving on the House Natural Resources Committee staff. Welcome back, and I yield back.
I thank the gentlewoman on her comments. I'm now going to begin our member panel and allow bill sponsors to speak on their legislation. I now recognize Ms. Harriet Hageman from Wyoming's at-large congressional district for her testimony on her bill.
Thank you, and thank you to Chairman Stauber for holding this legislative hearing today and for considering my bill, H.R. 280, also known as the Coal Act. The Coal Act takes two critical steps for states involved with the federal coal program. First, it nullifies the Department of Interior's Secretarial Order 3338, which placed a moratorium on new federal coal leases. And it also expedites the leasing process for qualified applications. For example, for any coal lease application that has already been commenced under NEPA. Since 1986, Wyoming has led the nation in coal production, producing about 40% of the nation's coal. Last year, we produced 191 million tons and shipped over 171 million tons to 26 different states. While there is mining in different areas of the state, Wyoming is blessed with a significant amount in the Powder River Basin, the largest coal deposit in North America. Due to the presence of the BLM and other federal agencies in that basin, much of our state's coal production is on federal land. In fact, we produce about 85% of all federal coal production. This reality makes us susceptible to misguided and nefarious federal policies. For example, in 2016, the Obama administration placed a moratorium on new coal leasing, that moratorium that is addressed in this bill. This moratorium was reversed the following year, reinstated by the Biden administration in 2021, reimposed by a federal judge in 2022, and further delayed by the Biden administration in 2023. The federal government has found other ways to destroy Wyoming's coal production. For example, the Biden administration slowed the approval of mine plan amendments for other Wyoming projects. And in 2024, the Biden administration amended the BLM Buffalo Resource Management Plan, which governs federal lands in the Powder River Basin, thereby choosing to pursue the, quote, no new leasing alternative, and thereby terminating all coal leasing by 2041. This whipsawing creates uncertainty that hampers the ability of coal companies to plan for the future, and it could lead to decreased production long before 2040, which was likely the intent of the Biden administration at the time. It was because of this federal campaign against coal that I first introduced the Coal Act in 2023 and reintroduced it again in this Congress. Since then, the 2016 moratorium was overturned by a federal judge and recognized by the Trump administration. Further, the Work and Families Tax Cut bill signed by President Trump on July 4th made necessary reforms to coal leasing as well. As the Trump administration and the Republican Congress advance a pro-coal agenda that will keep America powered, I am interested to hear the expert testimony of our witnesses today and discuss ways which this legislation can be further strengthened to reflect the current state of federal coal policies and prescribe further protections in the future from the harms of the past. When the federal government tries to destroy Wyoming's coal industry, it ends up turning the lights out and the heat off in America. My legislation, which codifies key aspects of President Trump's executive order, is yet another step in the right direction. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing today, and I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady. I now yield to Mr. Mike Collins from Georgia's 10th Congressional District for his testimony on his bill. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Across the country, energy projects are facing paralyzing delays because of outdated environmental review processes. What was once meant to be a tool for reasonable oversight has become a weapon used to block development, delay jobs, and drive up cost. Under the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, major projects must go through a maze of reviews, red tape, and litigation. The average environmental impact statement now takes over 4 years to complete, and often much longer. This is simply not sustainable if we want to remain an energy-producing nation. This bill takes a focused and strategic step to address that problem. It codifies Section 8 of President Trump's executive order reinvigorating America's beautiful, clean coal industry, which directed agencies to expand their use of categorical exclusions. Those are NEPA carve-outs for projects that don't require full environmental studies. Specifically, the bill directs the Secretary of Interior to identify both existing and potential categorical exclusions that relate to coal production and export, and to share that list with Congress within 30 days. It also encourages other federal agencies to adopt and rely on these exclusions under existing law. So we're not reinventing the wheel, but we are making government work smarter. This is about cutting delays, not cutting corners. These exclusions already exist. We're just requiring agencies to use them more efficiently so that we can unlock American production, reduce permitting backlogs, and help coal-producing communities get back to work. Coal has powered this nation for generations. It still plays a vital role in our energy security, our exports, and our industrial base. But without reform, the regulatory burden will continue to strangle the industry, and with it, the jobs and communities that depend on it. It's time for Congress to pick up where President Trump left off, but executive orders alone are not enough. They can be reversed with the stroke of a pen by future administrations, as we've seen far too often. That's why it's critical that Congress act to take these reforms off shaky ground and put them into law. We need to move from temporary guidance to permanent policy. This bill does exactly that. It takes a key section of President Trump's executive order on reviving clean coal and makes it the law of the land, ensuring regulatory clarity, stability of our coal producers, and a lasting commitment to American energy production. This is a modest, targeted, and much-needed step to reduce barriers, promote energy independence, and ensure NEPA is applied in a reasonable, not punitive way. Thank you, and I yield back.
I thank the gentleman for his testimony. I now recognize Mr. Pat Fallon from Texas' 4th Congressional District for his testimony on his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm proud to sponsor a common sense solution to unleash America's mineral wealth, of which we have in abundance. The Mineral Extraction for Renewable Industry and Critical Applications Act, better known as MERICA Act, would amend the Mineral Leasing Act for Acquired Lands, MLAL, by adding hard rock minerals as parts of deposits subject to lease under MLAL so that all federally acquired lands can be considered for hard rock mineral leasing. Right now, in places like North Texas, an area that I represent proudly, we have valuable lithium deposits locked up on federal lands and we can't utilize them. The MERICA Act would give the Secretary of Interior the authority, and I would say the latitude, to follow through on President Trump's executive order to ramp up mineral production on federal lands. A portion of our district falls within what is known as the Smackover Formation, which is a geological formation that encompasses areas from southern and eastern Texas across the Gulf states all the way to the Florida Panhandle. And thanks to a recent U.S. Geological Survey-led study that discovered that there is an estimated, now get this, amount of between 5 and 19 million tons of lithium reserves in this formation ready for us to tap into this mineral-rich deposit. The discovery of this wealth of critical minerals couldn't come at a better time, as our over-reliance on lithium imports, of course, from China and other adversaries, is at a natural high, and it really undermines our national security. We're playing into the hands of the powers that be in Beijing. I'm sure Xi Jinping is excited about current regulations, by granting them de facto control over the global lithium supply chain, whether through their domestic mines or ones that they've gained through other means such as the Belt and Road Initiative. The demand for lithium will only continue to increase as we embark on energy developments to address the growing burden on our power grid. This is better for the environment, for us to get it and extract it from the United States here. We have a strong environmental lobby, we have an independent judiciary, we have rule of law, we have an expertise, and our country, as a functioning representative republic, cares far more for the environment than would any kind of communist or authoritarian dictatorship. By passing the MERICA Act, we can take another step in the right direction that will tap our full potential of our national resources on federal lands. This will have a lasting impact on our economy, bolster U.S. national security, and ensure America stays a global leader for years to come. I spent 8 years in the Texas legislature. I would say, and I would consider this a cleanup bill, quite frankly, and take your pick. It's nonpartisan, bipartisan, and I would have filed this bill and really hope that it hit the floor if the minority was in the majority. I don't think it has anything to do with political party. I think it has everything to do with what's in the best interest of the United States. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman for his testimony. I now recognize Mr. Mark Amodei from Nevada's 2nd Congressional District for his testimony on his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate your courtesy. In May of 2022, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit affirmed a lower court decision revoking an approved mine plan of operation for the Rosemont Copper Mine project located partially in the Colorado National Forest in Pima County, Arizona. The Ninth Circuit's decision limits the Forest Service's ability to approve mining support activities necessary for including mining operations in federal land. This is no small matter. The entire economic viability of a mine can hinge on the ability to use surrounding lands for activities incidental to mining known as ancillary use. Ancillary use is kind of a key phrase because that's basically the way everybody'd been doing it regardless of administration for over 4 decades. And so this legislation was required as kind of to straighten out the Ninth Circuit decision so that the Forest Service and BLM and other public land managers that do NEPA in the context of permits like this can have the predictability and stability that they earned and enjoyed before. I can tell you that this legislation has been passed twice by the House of Representatives, coming out of this committee as a standalone piece of legislation and once as an add-on to appropriations. So it's not some new deal, let's get the plow out and find an unplowed field. This merely restores what has been the decades-long practice so that federal land managers are not left with confusion like, well, is it a Forest Service thing, is it a BLM thing, or whatever. And so I want to thank the representative from my home state, Ms. Strusacker, who will testify later, and I urge the committee's favorable support once again.
I thank the gentleman for his testimony. I now recognize the chairman of the full committee, Mr. Westerman, for his testimony.
Thank you, Chairman Gosar. Hard rock minerals are foundational to U.S. national and economic security with applications across the defense, aerospace, energy, and manufacturing sectors of the economy. Demand for these minerals is projected to rapidly increase in the coming years, placing strain on global supply chains, and we have to be ready for that. In fact, hard rock mining will need to increase 6-fold in the future in order to meet domestic mineral needs. Unfortunately, the United States has become dangerously reliant on mineral imports in recent decades. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, we are forced to import 100% of nearly a quarter of the minerals on its critical minerals list. To make matters worse, our mineral dependency plays right into the hands of our adversaries, and most notably, China controls approximately 60% of global critical mineral production, 90% of processing, and 75% of manufacturing. We've repeatedly seen the CCP implement mineral export restrictions and leverage its stranglehold over rare earths as a bargaining chip in trade negotiations, prompting increased uncertainty across key sectors of our economy. Simply put, our reliance on foreign critical minerals is one of the greatest strategic vulnerabilities facing our nation today. To unleash our vast amount of natural resources, we must take decisive action to cut through scores of red tape and reverse years of hostility against domestic mining, and particularly the actions of the Biden administration, which reversed project approvals and restricted development on millions of acres of public lands. According to S&P Global, it currently takes an average of 29 years for a critical mineral project to progress from the point of discovery to the point of production in the United States. Let me repeat that, 29 years for a critical mineral to progress from the point of discovery to the point of production. The only country in the world where it takes longer on average is Zambia. It must be really bad there. This unworkable timeline stems from permitting delays, regulatory uncertainty, and risk of endless frivolous litigation. Congress must enact comprehensive permitting reform to address this issue and allow domestic mining to thrive. National and economic security are not the only issues exacerbated by our lack of domestic mining. When we rely on foreign adversaries for our mineral inputs, it also leads to widespread labor, human rights, and environmental abuse. In the United States, we have the best labor and environmental standards across the globe. It is common sense that we should be doing more mining here to avoid reliance on minerals mined unethically through forced and child labor by the Chinese Communist Party. The committee went to Alaska last week, and we went to, I believe, was the world's largest silver mine, and their environmental and their safety record there was second to none. We know how to mine minerals, and we know how to do it in an environmentally approved manner, and we know how to do it in a safe manner, and it creates great paying jobs for American citizens. Unfortunately, the Trump administration has taken many steps to prioritize domestic hard rock mineral production, including issuing executive orders and common sense regulatory changes. We'd like to applaud the Department of Interior and the USGS for releasing their draft critical minerals list, which now includes copper, silicon, lead, as well as others that are essential for our country's national security as we move toward future advancements in artificial intelligence. The bills before us today will codify and build on these efforts, ensuring access to our nation's vast mineral wealth for future generations. I look forward to the robust discussion on this extremely important topic. I'd also like to mention and welcome our witness today, Mr. Sweet, who was a former constituent of mine in Arkansas's 4th Congressional District. Welcome, Adam. And with that, I yield back.
I thank the chairman. I now recognize the ranked member of the full committee, Mr. Hoffman, for his 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. Before I begin, Mr. Chairman, I have a unanimous consent request. I would like to enter into the record this article from CBS News yesterday. The headline is Climate Experts Slam Energy Department Report on Greenhouse Gases. It is an international group of more than 85 climate experts and a 439-page review that they have completed on how the Trump administration's Energy Department is failing to adequately represent current science on climate change, misrepresenting the literature and cherry-picking data. This is important to go into the record, Mr. Chairman, because while we debate legislation today to make carbon pollution great again and black lung and acid rain and everything else, there is a climate crisis, and we should at least be honest about the science.
The objection so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On both sides of the aisle, we're working towards the same goal, which is to secure a mineral supply chain that's reliable and sustainable. As my colleagues have mentioned, critical mineral supply chains are highly concentrated in a few countries. Not all of them are friendly to the United States. We can agree that our supply chains are vulnerable, that we need to make them stronger and more sustainable and more resilient. But unfortunately, that's where our similarities seem to end, because my Democratic colleagues and I want to maximize America's potential without leaving a path of destruction in our wake. Unfortunately, what I can tell you, Mr. Chairman, is I can assure you we cannot mine our way out of this with brute force like the bills on today's agenda. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, we don't even have the reserves in the ground. The United States cannot do this alone. We need to work with our allies to establish the safe and secure supply of minerals needed for the clean energy transition that is underway. And instead today, most mining in the United States is done by massive multinational conglomerates that extract publicly owned minerals without paying a cent back to the American taxpayers in royalties. That needs to stop. These corporations can then ship our minerals abroad for processing, where they enter the global market with no commitment that they will ever end up back in the U.S. economy. And now the bills on our agenda today want to rush that process, primarily by silencing people's voices. Before a mining company moves a mountain or drains hundreds of thousands of gallons of groundwater in a day or creates waste that is permanent hazard to clean drinking water, don't you think that affected communities should at least have a say? Republicans are even letting mining companies have the deep sea, expediting domestic permitting there despite opposition from the American Samoan government. The deep sea mining industry hasn't proven that it can successfully operate. But that's not stopping Republicans from risking domestic and global conflict to assist a couple of billionaires who asked Donald Trump to help to save their risky investments. That's what this is about. H.R. 4018 directs NOAA to unilaterally authorize mining in international waters, ignoring global agreements, and 170 countries negotiating a shared framework for deep sea mining. Sounds like a recipe for conflict and not for safety and security. That is not the way forward. During the last administration, Democrats took action to build the critical minerals industry that we need. After we passed advanced manufacturing and clean energy credits in the Inflation Reduction Act, private industry announced $277 billion in investments in manufacturing here in America. That included important processing and midstream manufacturing that we need to take us from ore to finished chip, battery, or solar panel. Crucially, it included the recycling industry that can help secure our supply chains in the near term and set us on a path for a sustainable circular economy. But Republicans voted to effectively kill many of those tax credits in their big, ugly bill, pulling the rug out from under the processing plants and factories and costing Americans an anticipated 840,000 good-paying, family-sustaining jobs by 2030. These bills won't bring those factories back, just as the giveaways for coal and two other bills on the agenda won't make coal dominant again. Coal had a time and a place. It powered the Industrial Revolution. Thank you, coal. But we are long past steam engines now. And back then, we didn't know the consequences of burning coal on our health and the climate. Today, we do. Coal is simply too expensive and destructive to continue propping it up. If Republicans were serious about lowering costs for people, they would stop resuscitating this dying, polluting industry. If they were serious, they would support the solar, wind, and battery industries instead of trying to suffocate them. Coal communities right now need new opportunities and diversified economies. They deserve more than empty promises that coal may someday be coming back, which is not. I look forward to hearing from today's witnesses, including Dr. Steve Felgus. Welcome back, Mr. Felgus. Served in the Biden administration with a focus on proactive reforms to improve the country's mining industry in ways that benefit both communities and the industry. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman for his testimony. We'll now move to our second panel, which is comprised of one witness. Let me remind the witness that under committee rules, you must limit your oral statement to the 5 minutes, but your entire statement will appear in your record. To begin your testimony, please press talk so we can all hear you, and push the button on the microphone. We use timing lights, so when you see green, you just go, yellow, it's start to slow down, and when it's red, you gotta stop. So with that, I will allow the witness to testify with 4-member questioning. I will now recognize the gentleman from Arkansas. No, sorry. Oh, recognize Mr. Seuss. You are now recognized for 5 minutes. Sorry. That's right.
Mr. Chair, Ranking Member Ansari, members of the subcommittee, Chairman Westerman, thank you for the opportunity to provide the Department of the Interior's testimony on the bills before the subcommittee today. My name is Adam Cease. I am Acting Assistant Secretary, Lands and Minerals Management at the Department of the Interior, and it is a privilege to be here today. At the Department of the Interior, we are working steadfastly and tirelessly to implement the President's energy dominance agenda. which is central to the country's economic, national, and energy security. Each of the bills advanced at today's hearing further that agenda, and the Department of the Interior accordingly supports them without reservation. Under your capable and steady stewardship, Chairman Stauber, this subcommittee has been similarly diligent in implementing sensible and needed energy policies. And on behalf of the Department of the Interior, I convey our support and appreciation. The United States is blessed with an abundance of energy, natural resources, and the development of those natural resources, particularly oil and natural gas, coal, critical and rare earth minerals, are central to our country's future successes. Energy is an input into everything we do, use, and consume. And the energy sector drives our nation's economy, providing high-paying jobs to millions of Americans and trillions of dollars in GDP. Since 2019, the United States has been a net energy exporter. That is a wonderful thing. It strengthens the United States' position on the world stage and enables our country to pursue more global peace and stability throughout the world. But this position of strength doesn't come inevitably. For 4 straight years, the prior administration attacked the domestic energy sector and its workers at every turn. Without exception, on President Biden's watch, the full federal government did all that it could to cripple domestic energy production, focusing the assault unyieldingly on oil and gas production, coal production, and other extractive energy sectors, without which, of course, our collective prosperity, individual enjoyment, quality of life, and opportunity for advancement, among so much else, would immeasurably plummet. This is precisely why the work of the Trump administration and the work of this subcommittee is so important. Under Secretary Burgum's leadership, the department is actively implementing the President's executive orders to unleash American energy and increase American mineral production. H.R. 4090 would rightly codify provisions of these executive orders. As President Trump has reaffirmed, American coal plays a pivotal part in our economy. It will continue to power the country for many decades to come. H.R. 280 and H.R. 4068, further efforts already taken by this administration to support U.S. coal production by requiring the Secretary to grant qualified lease coal applications and by nullifying the Obama administration's moratorium on new federal coal leases. The administration is also making significant efforts to ensure the successful development of other important minerals. President Trump has explained it is imperative for our national security that the United States take immediate action to facilitate maximum domestic mineral production and processing. H.R. 1366 and H.R. 3872 directly and precisely support that mission. Finally, the Trump administration is leading in the responsible development of offshore critical minerals. H.R. 4810 aids this effort by accelerating data collection and establishing an expedited permitting process for the Outer Continental Shelf Lands Act. And so I reiterate, the policy is advanced by the bills before you today are common sense, rational, and much needed, the net result of which would further strengthen our country and further support our communities and our collective well-being. I thank you again, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to be here today to express the Department of the Interior's support for the reasonable legislation before the subcommittee this morning. The Department of the Interior looks forward to continued engagement here and with the full Natural Resources Committee to ensure responsible development of the natural resources that power our economy, protect our national security, and support our livelihoods. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I thank the gentleman for his testimony. We'll move into questions. I'm going to go to the chairman of the full committee, Mr. Westerman, for his questions.
Thank you, Chairman Gosar, and thank you for your testimony, Mr. Cease. The USGS has recently updated its draft critical minerals list to include lithium. As you know, the Smackover Formation has incredible potential to meet the skyrocketing demands for lithium. How will H.R. 3872 help ensure that those lithium deposits are explored and developed reasonably?
I look at H.R. 3872, Chairman Westerman, as a cleaning up, so to speak, of the federal statutory scheme. The BLM has many authorities to authorize mining of different sorts on most of its lands that it manages. And I look at 3872 as authorizing those same practices, granting the BLM those same authorities on acquired lands. That's an appropriate step in the department's view.
So how concerned is the department about our reliance on foreign nations, obviously some of them adversarial, for critical minerals needed in defense and energy technologies?
Well, you explained it perfectly, Chairman Westerman. That's it. I mean, it's a critical problem. It is perhaps, as you said, one of the most largest vulnerabilities that we have with regard to our national security. We have very, very little domestic production of critical and rare earth minerals here in the United States. We have even less processing. If we don't straighten that out, the vulnerability only grows further. And the fact of the matter is, Chairman Westerman, that this is not a short-term fix. It's going to require immediate action, but it's going to require also sustained action. It's going to take investment, durable policies, and so the bill that you referenced, Chairman, is the right next step.
Right, and I'm glad you talked about processing and the long-term fix that's going to be required. We didn't get in this position overnight. I find it appalling that we've got 2 copper smelters in the United States with such a huge demand for copper. And last count I saw, China's got over 50 of them, which just illustrates a bigger problem that we have. It was mentioned that there's not enough critical minerals in the United States. That's not congruent with the data that I've seen. Matter of fact, when we were in Alaska last week, just talking about the Ambler Road area, of I think at the time there were 50 critical minerals on the critical minerals list, and 49 of those just in the Ambler Road area could be mined in sufficient quantities to meet the needs in the U.S. That's just one area in Alaska. It's not talking about northern Minnesota. It's not talking about all the uranium deposits that were taken off the table to be mined north of or in northern Arizona. I think if you look at all the places where we've said you can't mine, there may not be enough. But does the U.S. have potential to provide these critical minerals and rare earth elements from our own resources?
Yes, sir. No question about it. And, we hear what you mentioned repeatedly is that the United States can't be self-sufficient on critical rare earth and other mineral production. We hear that routinely. And so it's a bizarre line of thinking in our view, because it's something akin to, well, we can't do it all by ourselves, so why would we even trouble to start at all? And that's not how we're looking at it at the Department of the Interior. How we're looking at it is let's get started and let's see what we can do. And to your point, we know with quite certainty what we have in portions of our subsurface. We don't have any idea the full landscape of it. And the only way to do that with definitive answers, Mr. Chairman, is to begin the mining and see what we can produce. America has proven itself time and again as one of the most capable economies, full of the best and the brightest. I wouldn't bet against the U.S. mining sector on this front either.
Yeah, even though we've tied our hands behind our back multiple times, we not only need to mine more, we also need to process and refine more and manufacture more. That requires more energy, and we've tied our hands on energy production as well. But I agree that we have the resources, we have the people, and we have the innovation that we can dominate in this area if we will just unleash ourselves to do so. When I first came here, I was reminded of a parable by Aesop about an eagle flying high in the sky, and he was pierced by an arrow, and as he did his death spiral to the ground, he looked back at the arrow and said, "Alas, I've been pierced by an arrow feathered with my own plume." And that, I think, describes what we've done on natural resources policy in our country. We're killing ourselves with our own laws and regulations, and it's asinine when that happens. And when we've got all of the stuff that we need in the ground, we just need to get it out of the ground. And we know we can do that better than anyone else. I'm way out of time, didn't realize that. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman for his testimony. The ranking member for the subcommittee is now recognized, Ms. Hansori, 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. Deputy Assistant Secretary Cease, there's an energy affordability crisis in this country, as you know. Prices are rising and are set to increase even further, directly based on the decisions of the President, the Department of the Interior, and Republicans in Congress. As much as you may try to deflect, it is undeniable that the cheapest form of energy is wind and solar. And yet this administration is waging war against renewables while making every attempt to prop up dirty, expensive coal. I'd like to ask a few questions about the Department of Interior's rush to approve coal mining permits despite the impact on electricity bills, public health, and the climate. Using authorities based on President Trump's so-called energy emergency, the Department of the Interior has greenlit at least 3 coal mines under expedited review. To dig into one example, the Hurricane Creek coal mine in Tennessee would strip mine reforested, conserved land in an area where residents and scientists are fighting the coal legacy coal mines accountable for toxic mine waste in their water. Yet you approve the mine with a finding of no significant impact. According to you, no further environmental review was necessary. And this mine will primarily produce metallurgical coal, not coal for energy production. Is that correct?
I don't agree, Ranking Member, with the characterization on greenlighting and lighting and rushing the review. I stand by the Department of the Interior's work.
That's fine. The question is about whether it's to primarily produce metallurgical coal.
I believe, Ranking Member, that there is some metallurgical coal production, but there's also other coal production.
The answer is yes, and even metallurgical coal has seen flat or declining demand in recent years as innovations in steel production actually require far less coal. You called these coal rubber stamps part of the administration's, quote, commitment to common sense permitting, environmental stewardship, and energy dominance. But I'm not seeing any of that. As for energy dominance and independence, all this push for coal is not making American families' energy bills any less expensive. In fact, in Michigan, ratepayers are on the hook for potentially hundreds of millions of dollars because the Trump administration used emergency powers to keep an old coal plant running past its planned retirement, against the wishes of its local residents, the utility, and the grid operator. The administration extended the order again in late August over the objections of the local utility. If we want to talk about energy that's actually needed, are you aware of how many gigawatts of energy are being held up by this administration's refusal to permit wind and solar?
I think it is always kind of a race between natural gas and coal, Ranking Member Ansari, for what is the most affordable source of energy. And so at the Department of the Interior, in line with the President's energy dominance agenda, we are focused unyieldingly on processing, permitting, baseload, sustainable, reliable power to include
So I appreciate
greater
the answer.
coal
If you could-
production and natural gas production.
The question is, are you aware of how many gigawatts specifically of wind and solar have been held up? It's a yes or no question.
What I would say is that we have limited resources. So at the Department of the Interior, we have only so much
So
staff.
do you know how many gigawatts
We have
are held?
only so much budget, and so
Okay.
we have to prioritize the
Fair.
work that we're going to do because we only have, like I said, limited resources. And so in line with the President's agenda, what we are focused on is working
Is the more
tirelessly,
expensive
as I
version that
mentioned.
harms community. So it seems you don't know the precise number. You haven't been focused on it. According to Republican Governor Lombardo of Nevada, over 33 gigawatts of planned solar and battery storage are being impacted in Nevada alone. Over 3 gigawatts of offshore wind that is almost ready to come online and deliver affordable power to American families, but this administration is working to pull the plug. It's clear that this is not about an energy emergency or reducing people's energy bills. Otherwise, why would this administration be canceling every energy project that's already under construction and throwing up roadblocks for the fastest, cheapest, and safest forms of energy available. I yield back.
I thank the gentlewoman for her testimony, questions. I now look to the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Crank, for his 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Cease, as you may be aware, the state of Colorado is moving forward with plans to close all of its coal-fired power plants by 2031, well before they reach their natural retirement age. And as of 2024, Colorado's remaining coal plants still generated about 1/3 of the state's electricity. That means that Colorado is going to have to replace 1/3 of its power generation in just 5 years, leaving utilities scrambling to secure new sources of electricity, hopefully at affordable prices. The ranking member mentioned in her opening statement that I think she called it, quote, cheap renewables. They're displacing coal, especially when you have a state like Colorado mandating that happen. But analysis has shown in Colorado that shutting down coal plants will increase Colorado bills, utility bills, by $75 a month. Now, when Colorado Springs Utilities, which is a utility company in my city, in my community, when they went out to bid to bring additional renewable capacity online, prices were 60% higher than they expected. So Colorado Springs Utilities pivoted. They had to go to natural gas. Colorado renewables were subsidized. They were never cheap. Otherwise, utilities would be adopting them in droves. What's actually happened was that the Biden administration and states continue to manipulate the energy market, and that is a fact. And I sit here and I listen to this stuff, and I hear folks, particularly on the other side, and we know what it is. It's this adherence to the religion of their climate change. But the reality is, there are people in my community that are paying $75 more a month. Now, that may not matter if you live in some big mansion in San Francisco or in some other place, but people in my community live in the real world. $75 a month is a lot. And it is absolutely criminal that we continue to pass on, because of that agenda, we continue to pass on higher utility rates, and we cause single moms to have to choose whether they're going to buy their kids a new pair of shoes or send their kids to camp over the summer. And we sit here and sanctimoniously preach about stuff being cheap renewables. Give me a break while we take baseload off the table. I want to be clear. The states won't bear these costs. It's the ratepayer who bears the costs. This year alone in Colorado, 3 coal-fired power plants are scheduled to close. Craig Unit 1 in Craig, Comanche 2 in Mr. Hurd's district in Pueblo, both of those are in Mr. Hurd's district, and Pawnee Station in Brush. To meet its self-imposed emissions targets, the state is forcing Coloradans to pay more just to turn on their lights or to heat their homes. That's the reality of this. For example, Ezell Energy estimated it'll cost $1.4 billion to close its coal plants. Every dollar of that will fall on residential and commercial customers. Unless what? The government comes in and subsidizes it again? By the way, we're $37 trillion in debt. By 2031, this could raise electricity bills by 20 to 50%, up to $75 a month in Colorado. Affordable and reliable energy must remain accessible to everyone, and coal continues to be one of the cheapest and most dependable baseload power sources in our country. Finally, at Ray Nixon power plant that we just went to a trip with the Western Caucus, that's in my district, that provides steady baseload power. Natural gas is available to meet peak demand, and solar serves as an intermittent source. That's what's allowed Colorado Springs Utilities to deliver reliable and affordable power. I guess my one question Mr. Cease, do you believe coal will continue to play an important role in providing reliable baseload power for our grid?
Without a shadow of doubt.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman for his questions.
Mr. Chairman, I have a unanimous consent request.
Sure.
This would like to enter into the record a July 22nd report on a global study showing that 90% of renewables worldwide are cheaper than fossil fuels. So we are going deep through the looking glass here in this alternate reality. If there's any religion on this subject, it is the religion that is sacrificing American consumers at the altar of higher energy bills for fossil fuel industry.
Without objection, so ordered. The gentlewoman from California, Ms. Rivas, is recognized for her 5 minutes for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for recognizing me, and thank you, Principal Deputy Cease, for joining us today. I'm hoping you can answer a few quick questions on the expedited deep-sea mining process that H.R. 1366 would codify into law. The Department of Interior recently announced new permitting procedures for deep-sea mining that will cut out the state task force that informs the leasing process, as well as removal of important compliance steps. These updated procedures will reduce environmental review and effectively cut out public input through so-called emergency permitting procedures. Coastal states should have more input, not less, over a risky experimental industry that can have generational effects on their communities. Mr. Seuss, yes or no, can you commit that any expedited procedures the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management implements involve meaningful input from coastal state governments?
Yes, ma'am. Happy to meet with any state government that contacts the office.
Yes or no, are there revenue sharing structures in place for offshore mineral leasing so coastal governments can take part in any potential benefits?
It's certainly a policy the department is considering.
Okay. There's not a guaranteed revenue at all because the secretary can set whatever minimum royalty he or she wants or waive it entirely. The Trump administration is making a big assumption that there will be any revenue at all because a comprehensive analysis has found the business case for deep sea mining just doesn't add up. I ask for unanimous consent to enter the Ocean Foundation's February 2024 report entitled Deep Sea Mining Isn't Worth the Risk into the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you. The Ocean Foundation's report clearly states the extreme risks of seabed mining and the needed precautions that 27 countries and over 800 scientists and the fishing industry are calling for. This is exactly what states like California have already figured it out. When I was in the California state legislature, I led efforts to ban seabed minings on state waters in California. We do not have time to wait for the next crisis or emergency that kills millions of species, destroys thousands of small businesses along the coast, and costs billions in cleaning up before federal action is taken. We need to act now. California didn't wait for another emergency. We took steps to ban seabed mining. The benefits of seabed mining are not worth the harm to the environment and small businesses along the coast, which is why Oregon and Washington have also taken steps to ban this hazardous practice. Meanwhile, the Trump administration and House Republicans will stop at nothing to allow industry to do what it likes to boost profits without regard of how their actions could result in a major crisis that destroys the lives of millions of Americans. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thanks, gentlewoman. The gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Hurd, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Deputy Assistant Secretary Cease, in your testimony, you emphasized the importance of coal for America's economic security. In my Colorado district, the city of Pueblo has a fully functional coal-fired unit that faces early retirement because, in my view, of short-sighted government policy. This relates and raises serious concerns about reliability, affordability, and also the ability to meet growing demand. From your perspective, what are the long-term national security and economic consequences of taking these kinds of plants, like the Comanche unit in Pueblo, offline early?
I think it's a huge problem, Congressman, because coal, as we've discussed, provides communities like yours with reliable and affordable baseload power. And if we are decreasing existing baseload power, then we are putting ourselves at a disadvantage relative to others on the national stage. The point that I think most of us agree on is that there will be an extreme growth in energy demand over the coming years. And the last thing we can afford to do, if we're interested in that, to be quite honest, even if we're not interested in pursuing that AI arms race, the last thing that we can afford to do is to shut down ongoing, sustainable, baseload, affordable power for communities like yours.
Are intermittent resources like wind and solar able to meet the load demands consistently that AI and other data centers require in terms of electric demand on the grid?
No, sir.
And can you talk to us about the levelized cost of energy? Do you have any information you might be able to provide us about when we talk about the cost of various resource mixes, how baseload generation would compare to coal or natural gas versus other resources that are not always on 24/7 in terms of transmission costs, in terms of backup costs, battery costs, peaking demands, things like that?
Yes, sir. So it is a bit nuanced and regional, depending on which part of the country you're talking about, for all the obvious reasons, different characteristics of energy supply. And so it can be a detailed conversation, but the bottom line that really is not up for debate that you point out, Congressman, is that because wind and solar are not baseload, they're intermittent, and because they need battery backup in the best case that isn't even currently available, then you have to duplicate on the grid with backup baseload power. So the levelized cost of energy has, like many things, become a point of contention, but there is no debate that when it comes to affordable power, coal and natural gas lead the pack, and that intermittent energy sources, for the reasons that you mentioned, are at the back. And oftentimes, Congressman, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times as expensive as coal and natural gas.
Thank you for that. One other thing I wanted to point out is that wind and solar depend on imports of rare earths, polysilicon, and critical minerals, much of which comes from China. And I'm not sure that dependency is necessarily factored into the arguments about cost and the cheapness of renewables. Mr. Cease, is an energy source cheap if it makes us dependent on adversaries for supply chains?
No, sir. And if I might, I think there are a lot of circumstances that aren't introduced into this debate. You mentioned one of them, but there's a lot of other things that are unique to intermittent power sources that are conveniently neglected in this debate. But of course, if you are dependent on adversaries for an input into the infrastructure to produce the energy, that's not a good spot to be in.
Thank you very much for that testimony, Mr. Cease. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
I thank the gentleman for his questions. I now recognize Ms. Lee from Nevada for her next 5 questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's nice to see you. Thank you for being here. I represent Nevada, the Silver State, and so I don't have to tell anyone in this room that mining has long been and remains central to our economy. And today's discussion regarding the Mining Regulatory Clarity Act in particular is an important one for our state. So I'm going to focus a few questions on that, Mr. Cease. I want to ask about some refinements to the version of the MRCA before us today that will keep the bill's Rosemont fix firmly intact while further clarifying congressional intent to heed off any potential abuse or misuse. Rather than trying to respond, because this is sort of in the weeds, I just, and with our time constraints, I'd like to ask you to follow up in writing to my questions, if that's okay.
Yes, ma'am, happy to do it.
All right. First, in keeping with the long-held assumption that a claim holder is a prudent man, quote unquote, if they're proposing to invest resources in developing a mine, would the Department of the Interior support the addition of language to the MRCA that would simply make it explicit in this legislation that the use and the occupancy of a mill site is contingent upon the development of a valuable mineral deposit on a valid claim? And again, I'll ask you to provide that in writing. And relatedly, the MRCA currently states that a proprietor may locate, quote unquote, as many mill site claims as are reasonably necessary for its operation. Now, bipartisan, fair-minded organizations like Trout Unlimited have cautioned that the term reasonably necessary is well-intentioned but imprecise and could inadvertently allow actors to claim an unlimited amount of mill sites. So with that in mind, I'm asking if the department would have any objection to a small but significant revision to the bill text, striking the word reasonably and adding the word only. That is, specifying that a particular proprietor may locate only as many mill site claims as are necessary for its operations. Again, this is very in the weeds, so sorry to get very technical, but these are important refinements to this bill. We have had experience in Nevada where interpretations have led to misuse and abuse. So as we're considering this would be helpful if we could address that. Finally, the MRCA also includes a savings clause which establishes that mining companies would still have to be able to prove that there was a valuable mineral deposits on any claims with lands that have been withdrawn from mining, such as national parks. While it was added in good faith, this inclusion of the savings clause has prompted concerns that the exclusion of similar language regarding claims on unwithdrawal lands could be read by a court to imply that Congress somehow intended to eliminate or prevent validity claims on such lands. Again, I ask that the department take a look at that. And finally, I wanted to clarify, I want to move on to another important industry in Nevada, which is the solar industry, and take this time to ask for some clarity from you and the Trump administration this morning, because this is such a crucial industry to our economy as well. I mean, Nevada is called the Silver State. It could also be called the Solar State. You know, and this is a quote from our governor in a letter that he wrote to your secretary, to your boss, that Nevada, that solar is crucial to our state's economic future and will contribute to the nation's energy dominance and independence. This is from our Republican governor. And so what we are seeing, he alerted you that this new red tape requiring the sign off from the secretary on virtually every permit related to solar energy development has frozen key projects in our state that promise billions in economic benefits. Nevada, he emphasized, cannot afford to walk away from these benefits and their transformational effects on our economy. So I would hope, and I'm asking, what the DOI is doing with solar is not necessarily reform, but weaponization. And so I'm asking if you will commit to working with the solar industry as well as federal and state leaders from both parties to address the bipartisan concerns regarding this new approach to solar.
Yes, ma'am. One thing I pride myself on, me and my team, is taking meetings as they are requested. We don't say no to anybody. So to the extent that someone wants to interact and work with the department, we are open for business.
That's great. I do believe Governor Lombardo has not received a response to this letter, so we look forward to follow up on that. Thank you.
I thank the gentlelady for her questions. I now recognize the gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Ezell, to introduce his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My bill, H.R. 4018, codifies President Trump's executive order to unleash American offshore critical minerals and resources. This bill directs agencies within the Department of the Interior of Commerce to fast-tracking licensing, exploration, and commercial recovery of seabed minerals. Under the Biden administration, our minerals have been locked away and unable to be used while countries like China have been mining these resources for years. The United States must be the leader in this field, and we must strengthen our independence toward critical minerals. My bill is simple. It aims to unlock critical minerals located offshore. Doing so will increase the domestication of resources, strengthen our national security, and ensure responsible development of seabed minerals. And perhaps most importantly, not only does H.R. 4018 increase mineral supplies, that it can also massively bolster our defense supply chain by establishing domestic technology and reducing strategic vulnerabilities. H.R. 4018 is vital for the success of the American economy, technology innovation, and our national security, and represents an important step towards strengthening U.S. critical minerals independence. Mr. Seitz, can you highlight some of the actions that your department has taken to support this effort?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Congressman. So you're exactly, everything you say is spot on. And so the Secretary supports all of the policies in the bill. Bureau of Ocean Energy Management has done great work over the past months to fully wrap its arms around this issue and to begin to get things done. So we have streamlined some of our permitting and processing procedures. Of course, the legislation makes that statutory law, and we support that because, as you say, it is time to begin mining offshore and offshore in this country again for all sorts of reasons, economic and national security. So BOEM is looking has done that work, and BOEM is also considering some regulatory revisions that haven't been, those regulations that govern deep sea mining haven't been touched since the 80s, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So we are also looking at that. I will, sir, if I could just also highlight that BOEM, as it does with all of its other activities, continues to engage thoughtfully and thoroughly with all of the stakeholders.
Right. Yeah, there have been very few, very much overdue updates since Deep Seabed Hard Mineral Resources Act was passed in 1980. And could you just give us tell us what a few of your efforts have been to update some of the data?
Gladly, sir. And some of that, most of that comes out of the U.S. Geological Survey. Right. And of course, as you know, another one of Secretary Burgum's priorities is Map Baby Map. And what he focuses on with that slogan is that he, as the steward of these natural resources, can't effectively do his job without knowing what we have. And so one critical thing that we intend to do, we will do under Secretary Burgum's leadership is to the best we can fully understand what resources we have in the seabed floor and permit and authorize the responsible development of those. That's the target, and we're on our way there. Your bill aids in that effort, and so we appreciate that.
Thank you. How does my bill, H.R. 4018, reduce United States independence, particularly from China, of seabed minerals?
Yes, sir. Those minerals that we have on the seabed are an input into every technological device that we use in this country. They're also a key input into a lot of military tools. Mm-hmm. And it's remarkably nearsighted for us to be continuing down this path. So I'm thankful under President Trump's leadership that we are right-sizing, rectifying our approach consistent with the policies addressed in your bill to begin a path of self-direction and kind of determining our course for the future rather than being dependent on adversaries for supply chain.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
I thank the gentleman from Mississippi, the gentleman from Rhode Island, Mr. Magaziner, is recognized for his 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Cease, I come from Rhode Island, where we have been hurting with high energy costs, high electricity costs in particular, for years. And relief is finally in sight because the Revolution Wind project, an offshore wind development, is contracted to deliver more than a third of my state's electricity demand at well below the market rate, saving Rhode Islanders on their energy bills, lowering the cost of business for manufacturers, while employing hundreds of American workers. But 2 weeks ago, you halted the project, and I want to know why. To be clear, this project is already 80% complete. There are 45 turbines sitting off the coast of my district that have already been built and are ready to deliver power to the grid. So why have you stopped this project? Because I have the stop work order here, and it gives no clear rationale whatsoever.
Sir, the Revolution Wind project, like all offshore wind projects, is under review at the Department of the Interior, consistent with the President's January 20.
Under review for what?
It's under review for, as explained in the President's January 20th memorandum, and that it requires that we work with, obviously, not just folks inside the Department of the Interior, but also folks, our colleagues at several other agencies, many other agencies.
All right.
And so,
Mr.
with
Secretary,
regard,
I'm going to stop you there because this project was already thoroughly vetted and approved by BOEM, by the Department of Interior, by the Department of Defense, by every relevant regulator. It has been contracted to deliver energy to the grid. It has already been 80% built. And every day that this project is halted with no clear rationale for why is a day that hundreds of workers face the unemployment line and that my constituents are stuck with higher electric costs. And also, by the way, we talk about energy independence and achieving American energy dominance. This is American-made energy. American workers, American jurisdiction, right off the coast of my state. So I'll ask again, because we've got no clear answer from the administration, we have no clear answer in the stop work order. What is being reviewed?
sir, the stop work order, I think, speaks for itself. And respectfully, as I said, the project is under the review, consistent with the President's memorandum of January 20th. And because it's under review, because of the reasons listed there in the stop work order, I have nothing more to say at this point.
With all due respect, I have the stop work order right here. It is 1 page long. I can give it to you if you'd like to review it again. It provides no reason for why work has been stopped. It provides no explanation for what is being reviewed or how long we are going to have to wait for this review or who's conducting it. We have heard nothing from the administration. So I have this opportunity with you here. Can you tell us what is being reviewed? Why has the work been stopped?
As I said, Congressman, I think that the stop work order speaks for itself.
It says nothing.
What I would add only is that because the project is under review, and consistent with the President's January 20th memorandum, I have nothing more to say at this point.
Listen, I appreciate that, but like with all due respect, bullshit. Like there's nothing here in this stop work order that says why work has been stopped. No rationale has been presented. This project was fully approved, fully permitted by every relevant agency. I have met in Rhode Island with iron workers and laborers and electricians and pipe fitters who are now facing unemployment and have no idea why, can't plan because they don't know how long this stoppage is going to last. They don't know what to tell their families. And we are heading into winter where electricity costs, energy costs spike, and we don't know what to tell our constituents about how long they're going to have to wait for this energy to be delivered to the grid. I mean, your agency oversees this. Do you know what price of electricity the Revolution One project is contracted to deliver to Rhode Island?
I have heard different characterizations of the price.
So they are contracted, it's a contract in writing with our electric utility to provide power at 9 cents a kilowatt hour. 9 cents a kilowatt hour, that is less than half of our market rate for electricity. People are desperate for lower energy prices, for American-made energy, for American jobs. This project delivers all of that, and you all have stopped it, and you can't tell us why. You have failed to articulate why today. The stop work order has failed to articulate why. The administration has given no explanation at all. It is unacceptable. It is hurting my constituents. It is hurting our country, and we need answers. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. I'll acknowledge myself for the next 5 minutes. So technology is going to really help us, is it not, Mr. Cease?
I'm sorry?
Technology.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so coal in the intermediate area, they found lots of reserves of rare earths, right? Critical minerals.
Yes, sir.
So to get to that, you got to have mine, and there's coal there. So and there's another supplant of additional revenues, right?
Yes, sir. Correct.
Now, my understanding about lithium is Schlumberger. You're familiar with Schlumberger, right?
Yes, sir.
Seismic group.
Yes, sir.
And what they're doing is actually they need lots of water for lithium, right?
I believe that's right. Yes, sir.
Okay. So the first question is mills. We're talking about mills, this new way of pulverizing minerals and whatnot. Why would we put any limitations on that? Because we're still looking at how it plays out, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so with lithium, they can actually, when they tag into a lower aquifer, like, are you familiar with Harquahala underneath Buckeye, Arizona?
I'm not.
It's a big
Mr.
lake
Chair.
underneath it. It's got lots of reserves, but it's heavy metals and arsenic laden. And what they do is they actually will tag into that aquifer and actually clean the water so that it becomes usable. Have you heard about this process?
I have, just a bit.
And your take on it?
Well, I think it's consistent, Mr. Chair, with the conversation I had with Chairman Westerman, that America seems to find a way at every turn. And so that's just the next example. I don't pretend to have an idea of what the next technologies will be, but as I said, I wouldn't bet against something that's pretty powerful and something that would really enable us to achieve great things.
And we're going to need less energy, right, in the future?
No, sir.
We're going to need lots of it, right?
The
Data
projections
centers-
are.
Data centers are going all over my district on 303, and we need lots of it. So we're going to need all hands on above. You're familiar with, let me change tack here. Coal.
Yes, sir.
The scrubbers and everything, was it getting really any particulates into the air? You know, it's pretty darn clean when you're using those
It's
scrubbers.
remarkably clean. That's a point that I'm glad you mentioned because it's something that's often neglected. Not only is coal here in the United States much cleaner naturally than coal that's produced in other parts of the world, it doesn't get enough attention, but that's the reality. The next point that you make is maybe even more powerful, and that's that the technological advances in burning coal make it incredibly clean, and so there's no downside. In other words, in my view.
Right. Now, the question I had was to the gentleman who was asking you from Rhode Island. I think it's pretty specific what you're looking for is that under the Biden administration, there were a lot of lax interpretations of the law.
Yes,
Say
sir.
it that way. So it seems to me that the whole process is under review, is it not?
Yes, sir.
So that's pretty specific, isn't it?
It is, and if I might, Mr. Chair, mention one thing that I also think speaks for itself, but Acting Solicitor Zerzan reinstated a M opinion that Mr. Giorgiani instituted from the first Trump administration. Acting Solicitor Greg Zerzan did that on May 1st. That's a document that also, in my view, speaks for itself, and I believe, in line with your question, is worth attention.
Well, then we don't know actually who was monitoring the pen, right?
That's right.
So it could have been anybody okaying this stuff.
Potentially so. I was not there. Correct.
Good. Well, thank you, Mr. Cease. I see no more people on the dais. And with that, we'll let you go and we'll set up our panel two. Thank you so very much, Mr. Cease.
Thank you for having me.
Now, while the clerk resets our witness table, I will remind the witnesses that under committee rules, they must limit their oral statements to 5 minutes, but their entire statement will be made public in the record. We use lights here, so when you see the green light, you're a go. Yellow, you start slowing down, and give me the red light, you gotta stop. I think that goes without doubt. And please remember to hit your microphone so we can all hear you. As with the second panel, I will allow all witnesses to testify before member questioning. Our first witness is Mr. Hans Schmidt, who is the president and CEO of Ocean Minerals LLC. He is stationed in Houston, Texas. Mr. Schmidt, you are now recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman, Ranking Member Ansari, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. My name is Hans Schmidt, and I serve as the CEO of...
Is your button pushed?
Sorry?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
You gotta
I just got to get a little
swallow
closer.
that mic.
My name is Hans Schmidt, and I serve as the CEO of Ocean Minerals and the wholly owned subsidiary company, Mohana Minerals. I commend the committee for advancing HR 1418 and for recognizing the urgent need to assert American leadership in the race for critical minerals. Last month, during the Cook Islands' 60th anniversary of self-governance, U.S. officials, including White House National Security Council Senior Director David Copley and Department of Commerce Deputy Assistant Secretary Joshua Kroon, joined the celebrations and announced a joint statement on U.S. Cook Islands cooperation on seabed mineral resources. This underscores America's commitment to responsible development in the Pacific. In addition, NOAA is preparing to send a research team into the region to expand the baseline data collection, further advancing our scientific understanding of the seabed environment. Ocean Minerals traces its origins to a U.S. Army research laboratory initiative following China's 2011 rare earth export restrictions. That research identified polymetallic nodules in the Cook Islands exclusive economic zone as among some of the most resource-rich and geopolitical favorable critical mineral deposits in the world. Within our 23,600 square kilometer license area, Mohana Minerals has identified polymetallic nodules containing more than 80 million tons of manganese, 2.5 million tons of cobalt, 1.4 million tons of nickel, 750,000 tons of copper, and significant amounts of rare earth elements. These nodules lie unattached on the seafloor surface, accessible without excavation, offering a far less complicated extraction method. Today, China controls 87% of the rare earth refining, 60% of nickel processing, and the majority of cobalt production. This dominance is not simply economic, it's strategic. The United States must secure allied-sourced alternatives to safeguard our industrial base, energy grid, and national defense. President Trump's April 2025 executive order unleashing America's offshore critical minerals and resources recognizes seabed minerals as an essential U.S. strategy. HR 1418 builds on this by authorizing engagement in deep-sea exploration and development, prioritizing U.S.-aligned jurisdictions and companies. Our project directly supports this policy framework. Ocean Minerals is a U.S.-controlled company operating in the Cook Islands under the 2024 seabed mineral regulations, which are some of the most stringent in the world. We are advancing both resource development and environmental stewardship. Our operations are undergoing a full environmental and social impact assessment with oversight from the Cook Islands government and active engagement with civil society. Financially, a single Ocean's mineral production vessel is projected to generate $1.4 billion in annual revenue with pre-tax IRR of 36% and an NPV exceeding $4.7 billion. These economics are backed by our proprietary U.S.-developed metallurgical technology, currently moving from laboratory validation towards pilot scale. We are also working to build the first commercial-grade deep-sea mining vessel and establish the first US-based refinery for processing seabed resources. This would secure not only upstream supply, but also importantly downstream industrial capability, a full ecosystem that reduces US dependence on underlying supplies across the value chain. Let me emphasize, deep sea development can and must be done responsibly. Nodules can be collected from the seaboard surface with minimal impact to the environment. We are designing systems to reduce sediment impact and investing in marine research partnerships to ensure the best practices. The Cook Islands government, NOAA, and US agencies can help ensure that this development sets a global standard for transparency and sustainability. HR 4018 comes at a pivotal moment. It would provide strategic clarity and support for offshore resource projects, encourage cooperation with allied nations, including Pacific Islands, leverage America's technological advantage and US-controlled companies to strengthen the supply chain security. Chairman and members, these seabed resources are a critical part of the solution to securing our critical mineral supply chain. The question is whether the United States will lead or whether we will cede this ground to strategic competitors. Ocean Minerals stands ready to demonstrate how American innovation and allied partnerships can responsibly secure the minerals that power our economy, our energy transition, and our national defense. We urge you to support HR 1418, and thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. Our next witness is Mr. Travis Deety, who is the Executive Director of the Wyoming Mining Association and is stationed in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Mr. Deety, it's your 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Ansari. My name is Travis Deety. I am the Executive Director of the Wyoming Mining Association, and I really appreciate the kind invitation to join you here today to crawl out from under my rock in Wyoming and get out here to talk about a couple of pretty important bills for us, specifically H.R. 280 and H.R. 4068. So the Wyoming Mining Association, we're the statewide trade association in Wyoming, representing 34 mining companies producing bentonite coal, trona, which is our natural soda ash industry, uranium and lignite, as well as companies developing gold, copper, lithium, and 2 significant rare earths deposits as well. We also represent more than 100 associate member companies and 1 electrical co-op and 2 advanced nuclear power companies. We've been the leading coal-producing state since 1986, as Representative Hageman alluded to. Recent estimates give Wyoming more than 165 billion tons of economically recoverable coal, with over 1.4 trillion tons in total coal reserves. Our reserve is massive. Electrical power is by far our largest coal consumer, and Wyoming produces about 40% of the nation's thermal coal, with coal providing for between 18 and 23% of America's electricity generation at any given time. Wyoming coal provides between 7.5 and 9.2% of the nation's electricity. The coal industry is critical for Wyoming, employing 4,300 men and women with an average coal wage of about $102,000 per year. That wage is well above the state average. Every coal mining job supports another 2 to 3 jobs in the service and supply industry. The BLM federal coal leasing program, which allows companies to lease and mine on federal land, has been a remarkable success for Wyoming. The annual financial contribution of coal mining to the state of Wyoming and local governments in the form of taxes, royalties, and fees is estimated at $600 million a year. Last year, Wyoming's share of federal mineral royalties was over $170 million. And in a town where you talk in trillions, $170 million, that means that's real money in Wyoming. The revenue has been dedicated to building schools, supporting community colleges and highways, and keeping the tax burden low on Wyoming citizens. For over 3 decades, bonus bids from the federal coal leasing program have totaled over $2.6 billion, and these funds have gone directly to build schools and school facilities in every county in Wyoming. The impact the industry and the coal leasing program has is simply huge. We're talking real jobs, real revenue, and we're talking real people. And when you think about the purpose of the coal leasing program to get a public benefit and to make sure the American taxpayer is getting their bang for their buck, we are. And the idea that we're getting shortchanged by the program, which was the main reason the moratorium was put in place in the first place under the Obama administration, it's simply false. Wyoming mines are among the safest, most productive, and most environmentally responsible surface mines globally. Mine reclamation is ongoing and takes place simultaneously with mining activities, and it starts before the first shovel of earth is even turned. With the projected demand from a DOE study from the last couple of months ago of 35 to 50% increase in American electricity needs by 2024, we are in a spot due to our ability to provide electricity for growing artificial intelligence, data centers, manufacturing, general electrification, electric vehicles. We are going to need a lot more power than we currently generate right now. And we're going to need coal. We're going to need coal, we're going to need gas, we're going to need nuclear, and we cannot rely on intermittent sources of power. So coal is going to remain in the mix. We don't have enough coal leased right now. The general lack of leasing activity in the past 15 years has left us in a spot. We have about 3.2 billion tons of coal under lease right now. Not all of that is recoverable, but when you look at projected demand and what we're going to need in the future, we simply don't have enough. So we need to make the coal resource available. And with regards to looking at the NEPA process and ways to streamline so that we can get more leases on the table and get more coal leased, anything that we can do, to help that is appreciated. So offering support for both of the bills that I was called here to talk to today. And again, appreciate the invitation, and I look forward to the conversation. And I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your testimony. Our next witness is Dr. Steve Feldegas, who is a former Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary, Land and Minerals at the U.S. Department of the Interior and is stationed here in Washington, D.C. Dr. Feldegas, you now have recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Chairman Stauber, Ranking Member Ansari, I appreciate the invitation to testify before you today. My name is Steve Felgus, and I recently served as the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary for Land and Minerals Management at the Department of the Interior, where I oversaw the Bureau of Land Management and helped lead the Interagency Working Group on Mineral Laws, Regulations, and Permitting. Now, a number of the bills before us today share a common premise, and that is that if you cut the public out and force projects through faster, that development will accelerate. But my experience tells a different story, because that strategy backfires. It creates longer delays, costlier litigation, and fewer successful projects. Projects don't succeed because we add more shortcuts to the process. They succeed because the agencies doing the permitting have the resources they need to do the job properly, and they succeed because they earn community trust and support. Let me explain why with a simple truth. Environmental reviews are not what are slowing mining projects down. Community opposition is. When we eliminate opportunities to address opposition constructively, we don't eliminate that opposition. We simply force it into courtrooms where it takes longer to resolve and creates lasting mistrust. Instead, had communities been brought in earlier from the beginning of the project, they might have become ardent supporters of that project. So we take potential collaboration and we turn it into confrontation. And instead of partners, we create plaintiffs. Consider Montana's Siboney-Stillwater mine. In the mid-1990s, that company faced angry residents threatening lawsuits over the development of that project. Now, rather than fighting through that opposition, the company chose to engage. And they developed a good neighbor agreement that was signed with the potential opponents in 2000. And the result of that was, according to the company, reduced permitting delays and largely eliminating concerns about transparency. And in the 24 years since, there's been no arbitration and no environmental litigation around that project. So this isn't just good policy, it's good business. The International Council on Mining and Metals, which represents 26 of the world's largest mining companies, understands this. Their CEO calls trust between mining companies and local communities, quote, the industry's most valuable commodity. Not gold, not platinum, not lithium, but trust. And when industry leaders themselves say trust is their most valuable asset, why should we shortcut the very processes that build that trust? Now let me talk about NEPA for a moment, because I think there's a lot of discussion about what NEPA really is for people on the ground. And the fact is, NEPA is about listening. It's about making sure that people are heard. And often it's the only chance that anyone has to weigh in on projects that are going to impact their lives. If someone wants to build something that's going to affect their water or their air or where their children are playing, NEPA says you get to speak up. You get to ask questions and you get to be part of that conversation. And what the data actually shows is that NEPA is not slowing projects down. And under the Biden administration, BLM approved at least 49 mines. I think the number is actually closer to 55 by the time we left office. 36 of those were brand new mines. And in Nevada, we were able to get from notice of intent to a record of decision in under 2 years on average, which is faster than almost anywhere else in the world. Now, the global average for the whole process, going from discovery to production, this number gets thrown around a lot. Currently, it's being reported that the US takes 19 years, just barely over the international average of 17, and only 10 months slower than Canada, and also faster than a lot of countries. So the choice before us isn't between speed and community engagement. It's between short-term expediency and long-term success. By silencing communities and shortcutting essential processes, these bills might produce permits faster, but they'll produce projects that face greater opposition, more legal challenges, and ultimately longer delays. True mineral security requires genuine community partnership. It requires the patience to prioritize sustainable development over short-term extracting targets. And most fundamentally, successful mineral development depends on community trust. The bills before us, some of the bills before us, ignore that reality and double down on an approach that prioritizes confrontation over collaboration. But the evidence is clear from successful mining operations, from industry leaders, and from federal land management expertise. We need a fundamentally different approach. So I urge this committee to pursue policies that build genuine partnerships with the communities that will host these critical projects. Because faster permitting isn't just about cutting steps, it's about building trust so projects can actually move forward. The path to mineral security runs through community trust and long-term thinking, not through shortcuts that create more problems than they solve. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Our last witness is Ms. Deborah Strusacker. She is a mining and public lands policy consultant and co-founder of the Women's Mining Coalition, and is stationed in Reno, Nevada. Ms. Strusacker, you are now recognized for your 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Stauber, Ranking Member Ansari, and members of the committee. On behalf of the Women's Mining Coalition, I really appreciate this opportunity to testify today. 3 decades of unfavorable policies have discouraged private sector investment in U.S. minerals exploration and development and have hollowed out the mining sector. Today's minerals emergency is a direct result of neglecting the importance of maintaining a strong domestic mining industry capable of providing essential minerals. President Trump's minerals executive orders and several of the bills being heard today will eliminate some of the barriers to domestic minerals exploration and mine development that have caused the minerals emergency. These barriers include the costly, lengthy, and litigious permitting process, over 30 years of legislative threats to radically amend the U.S. mining law, and the Ninth Circuit Court's flawed 2022 mining law ruling in the Rosemont case, both of which seek to eliminate the security of land tenure that is the hallmark of the mining law. Land withdrawals that have put millions of acres of potentially mineralized lands off limits. Regulations and land use plans that restrict minerals activities. And the 30-year absence of federal mining and mineral processing R&D resulting from Congress's decision in 1995 to stop funding the U.S. Bureau of Mines. H.R. 4090, 3872, and 1366 take important steps to reduce these barriers and to respond to the minerals emergency. H.R. 4090 codifies directives in President Trump's executive orders to remove roadblocks to mineral exploration and development on federal lands by identifying laws and regulations that impede mineral activities and that need to be revised or revoked. H.R. 3872 adds hard rock minerals to the Minerals Leasing Act for acquired lands. The nation's 64 million acres of acquired lands are severely underexplored. In 2018, only a minuscule 50,000 acres, that's roughly 0.08% of acquired lands, were being explored and developed, and most of that work was being done in Missouri. Congress should consider making acquired lands subject to the mining law's self-executing claims system in order to facilitate exploration and development. H.R. 1366 would reduce the problem stemming from the Rosemont Court's misinterpretation of the mining law. This bill authorizes a new kind of mill site that can be co-located coterminously with mining claims and on mining claims, and it can be located, these new mill sites can be located on mineralized or unmineralized lands within a plan of operations. H.R. 1366 also creates a long-awaited and much-needed abandoned hard rock mine fund that would use the annual claims maintenance fees that would be paid for this new kind of mill site. In response to the mining law directive that is in Executive Order 14241 and to Rosemont, we suggest that H.R. 4090 be expanded to explicitly confirm that the mining law guarantees secure land tenure and authorizes putting mine support facilities on public lands open to mineral entry regardless of their mineral character. Because the mining law leverages private sector investment to discover and develop minerals, it will play an essential role in solving the minerals emergency. The Map Baby Map directive in H.R. 4090 will use modern mapping techniques to find hidden mineral deposits that are buried beneath unmineralized rocks, but mapping is just the beginning. Exploring for hidden minerals requires multi-million-dollar drilling programs to identify economically viable mineral deposits. Permitting exploration needs to be accelerated by streamlining approvals for projects that disturb fewer than 20 acres and by developing a permit by rule or categorical exclusion for larger, more advanced exploration projects. Expediting exploration is a key to increasing minerals production. Mineral processing R&D is required to solve the metallurgical challenges associated with economically recovering byproduct critical minerals from mine tailings. Congress thus needs to restore the federal mining and metallurgical R&D capabilities that were lost with the demise of the U.S. Bureau of Mines. Recognizing that minerals security is national security, the Women's Mining Coalition applauds Chairman Stauber, Mr. Fallon, and Mr. Amodei for their leadership in introducing these bills to help restore America to its rightful place as the world's leading producer of minerals. We thank you again for this opportunity to testify, and I'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you very much for your testimony. The chair will now recognize members for 5 minutes of questions, and I will be recognizing myself for 5 minutes. What's that? I do Crank first. Oh, Mr. Crank, I'm going to give you the first shot at the 5 minutes. I apologize. You're up.
You are very kind, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you all for your testimony. China currently holds the most exploratory leases issued by the International Seabed Authority. Of the 22 exploratory leases granted for 15-year terms, China holds 5, the most of any country, while Russia holds 2, and that means that nearly 30% of current exploration leases are controlled by our adversaries. Meanwhile, the United States is already heavily reliant on China for the extraction, processing, and refining of critical minerals. According to the U.S. Geological Survey's 2025 Mineral Commodities Report, the United States is more than 50% net import reliant for non-fuel mineral commodities, and China is the largest supplier, providing 21 minerals. To reduce our dependence on foreign adversaries, the Trump administration has committed to restarting domestic mining and cutting back regulatory burdens that have effectively shut down hard rock mining in the U.S. Given that polymetallic nodules on the ocean floor contain high concentrations of key critical minerals, we must consider offshore extraction as part of a comprehensive strategy to reduce reliance on China. Mr. Smith, given China's significant share of deep-sea mining leases, in your expert opinion, how capable are they of securing extraction leases from the International Seabed Authority, and what steps should the U.S. take to stay ahead?
The Chinese have a very clear plan with regards to developing their underwater mining technologies and developing that industry as they have done with terrestrial deposits. There's an instance of them taking all the different agencies that were dispersed across China and consolidating them into a centralized location at a port city and giving them the directive to develop this technology and to put this into being. And we know that on the extractive side, they've already built equipment, they've tested equipment, not at full ocean depth yet, but getting there. On the metallurgical side, they've done extensive work on extracting of metals out of the polymetallic nodules. And what we see is a government-led and government-driven initiative pushing industry through selective aid to get this technology and this industry off the ground. And following through on that, they will be successful to get to where they want to be. That is what they are determined to do, and we believe they will get there. Consequently, for the U.S., we find this to be a very interesting situation. The technology and the ability for the U.S. and the U.S. partners to counter this is very strong. The technology and the ability of the U.S. exists with this technology. In fact, the first instances of deep-sea mining technology were built and proven in the 1970s by U.S. companies. And the U.S. currently leads in that field. What we are seeing, though, is that what we lack is the same thrust and push from the government and the support to make sure that the U.S. take this lead that we currently have with technology and what we've proven and turn it into an industry that we can rely on through mining not only our domestic resources, but also aligning with selective and aligned partners to be able to bring this to the market.
And Mr. Smith, I serve also on the House Armed Services Committee. You know, China recognizes the United States as its main adversary. There's times I sit on this committee, and by the way, China uses everything to them is about defense.
Yeah.
Here, we don't seem to look at it that way. We should, and we need to, but we're not as good at that as China is. Unfortunately, we need to get better. Mr. Dede, in our previous panel with Assistant Secretary Cease, I raised Colorado's plan to retire all of its coal-fired power plants by 2031, and I have a lot of concerns about that. Your testimony highlights future load growth, and the need for additional generation on our nation's grid. Do you believe Colorado's forced closure of coal-fired power plants will impact consumers' access to reliable energy as electricity demands continue to grow?
Congressman, yes, absolutely. As I stated in my testimony, we need more energy based on projected demand, not less. We need reliable, dispatchable energy. We need coal. We need gas. We need nuclear. What we really need in this country, and we're kind of seeing it actually, and it's very refreshing to see an all-that-works strategy as opposed to an all-of-the-above strategy. And what works is coal, oil, coal, gas, and nuclear. And when you talk about affordability, One of the reasons why electricity generation, you can look at the correlation of coal coming off the grid, renewables coming on the grid, and energy prices rise, and it's largely because of the unreliability and the intermittent power that you have to use a backup, and those coal plants and those gas plants weren't meant to ramp up and ramp down. Right. They were meant to run at 95% capacity all the time so that when you turn your lights on, the lights come on. And we're seeing in this country, in large major cities across the country, that have gotten accustomed to rolling brownouts because the supply just does not meet the demand. And that's third world stuff right there, Congressman. And we need to keep your coal plants online.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, thank you for your indulgence.
Yeah, absolutely.
Appreciate it.
We have Representative Dingell up from the great state of Michigan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I look forward to any bipartisan effort this committee makes to lower the costs to everyday Americans. However, I have a few concerns with some of the legislation in front of us today, and I don't believe it's going to reduce the cost for some of these pieces. I don't believe will reduce any cost for Americans. H.R. 4068, the Streamlining NEPA for Coal Act, directs the Secretary of the Interior to identify existing and potential categorical exclusions to the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, as we call it, to further the production and export the coal. Instead of considering ways to reduce Americans' energy costs, we are considering language to find ways to weaken NEPA for the benefit of foreign countries like China. I know my colleagues across the aisle are worried about it, and you talk about more and more how they're building more coal plants, but is it really what we want to do to remove our bedrock environmental laws to help meet China's growing demand? Look, I'm going to be honest, I admit it. I was married to John Dingell, the man who I loved with my whole heart and soul, and he worked hard to get NEPA passed and signed into law. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But what NEPA requires is federal agencies to assess the environmental effects of their proposed actions before making decisions. Today, it continues to be one of the nation's strongest tools in ensuring that communities across the country have meaningful input on major federal actions. NEPA's basic policy, and by the way, it's around the world, it's considered the Magna Carta of, other countries talk about it. NEPA's basic policy is to ensure that all branches of government, including the judiciary, give proper consideration to the impacts a project will have on the environment before any federal action is taken. Gaining access to the courts has always been an integral component of compliance with NEPA. Local communities and stakeholders should have the ability to have a strong voice through filing legal challenges when they fear a project is not in compliance with NEPA. And look, right now, I've got a community that is up in arms. It's taking radioactive waste that it doesn't want. It's near water. And by the way, it's not federal law. It's state law that doesn't allow community input to be taken into account on the permitting. And this community is on fire. They're on fire against all of us. And state law needs to be changed on that. But I've seen why community input matters. So as I've made clear at my hearings with all of you, the chair knows I want to work with Republicans on a bipartisan permitting reform efforts, but we must ensure it's done in a way that protects our climate and our environment and our nation's own long-term benefit. And communities should have input. We don't want it, but as Mark witness that I'm about to ask a question said, it isn't slowing down all the projects people think. Then Mr. Felgus, I have a question on the coal. Is the U.S. domestic demand for coal growing or shrinking?
Certainly since, over the past nearly 20 years, it's been shrinking.
And which country is leading the global demand for coal and will be searching for further import opportunities for coal?
My understanding is that's China.
And finally, will increasing coal production for foreign export lead to lower energy costs for Americans?
I would not expect so, no.
So I just want to say to my colleagues, increasing the United States exports of coal at the expense of our environment will not lead to the lowering costs for everyday Americans. So I'm going to urge my colleagues to expose this, and as I've said before, I want to work with the chairman on minerals because it is a very real issue. And with that, I will yield back.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask unanimous consent that the following letter from the National Mining Association expressing support for H.R. 1366, H.R. 280, H.R. 4068, and H.R. 4090 be entered into the record. Without objection, so ordered. Next up is Sheriff Ezell from Mississippi for 5 minutes. Sheriff.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Schmidt, securing the supply chain for critical minerals is a top priority for the Trump administration. As you know, this committee is working on several pieces of legislation to help advance those goals. My bill, H.R. 4018, is specifically crafted to help advance deep-sea mining by codifying portions of President Trump's Executive Order 14285. We believe that deep-sea mining could provide an incredible new opportunity for the United States to produce additional critical minerals needed for many sectors of our economy, including technology, defense, and energy. What are your thoughts on the potential deep-sea mining has to help the United States meet its critical mineral needs?
Congressman, our view is that in order to meet the demands of critical metals in the United States, deep-sea mining is an essential part of that. This combined with all the other mining that is occurring is essential to meet that demand. And I think the other thing that it also does is breaks down the reliance on non-aligned partners. The bill directs various agencies to ensure that the support needed for this industry to develop using the American technology lead that we have and to bring this industry into being, resulting in not only technological vessels and processing facilities that are sourced in the U.S. and would be domiciled in the U.S., which are, create incredible industry opportunities while supplying these metals. It also goes further by ensuring that there's alignment with partners where these metals can be sourced. I think one of the realities we have to face is that a lot of the metals that the U.S. needs are not readily available in U.S. territories, and therefore alignment with strategic partners is important, and particularly partners aligned with the American goals and visions. So I think without this bill, it was a struggle. It was a struggle getting the attention of people. It was a struggle getting people focused and agencies focused on what is needed to get this done. And this bill goes a very long way to making sure that when the industry comes to the government to help grow the sector and to bring it into production so we can answer these demands, we get the attention, the support, and the guidance necessary.
Very good. What role does China currently play in deep-sea mining sector? How do American capabilities compare with what you know of the Chinese?
So the Chinese currently have a fairly strong influence within the International Seabed Authority. As mentioned before, they hold a number of exploration licenses and are very active within that community. In addition to that, the Chinese government has clearly stated that their industry needs to build the technology and the equipment to bring this into being. And the Chinese are actively looking for resources. So they are looking for deposits that are currently undeveloped and are looking to secure those. And I think that is an important initiative if you look at the histories of how China has secured the raw supply and through that developed a extractive and refining industry that they now dominate. And I think what needs to happen, and under the bill, is that America needs to step into that position as well, where we not only go out and secure the raw materials, we use that as a mechanism for building, as the foundation for building this industry and building all the technologies and developments that we need here in the U.S.
What does the U.S. need to do to establish and expand our lead in this sector?
The industry is a nascent industry. and it is not yet at the point where the traditional capital markets and the funding mechanisms that traditional mining projects use to get into production are available to us. So because of the strategic nature of what we're doing and the stage at which we find ourselves, this is a great opportunity for the US government to step in as an industry development partner and help bridge that gap from where we currently find ourselves to the point that we have bankable projects that traditional financing and traditional methods of running this sector can take place. Were this a part of an existing industry, that would not be needed. But this is new, and it is critical and it's essential for going forward. So I think it warrants that type of initiative and effort.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask unanimous consent once again that the following November 2023 article from the U.S. Energy Information Administration highlighting the importance of U.S. coal exports to Europe and countering Russia in light of the Russian invasion of Ukraine be entered into the record. Without objection, so ordered. Next up is Ranking Member Ansari for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Stauber. Dr. Feldges, welcome back to the committee. I appreciate your testimony on proven ways to improve mining permitting. Arizona, the state that I represent, is a mining state. We've seen the benefits, the industry, the jobs, and also the challenges in ensuring that we protect the environment, preserve our scarce water supplies, and address community concerns. Dr. Feldges, during the last administration, you worked on the report for the Interagency Working Group report on mining law reform, which brought together industry, tribes, communities, and other stakeholders. Could you please elaborate on the best practices for improving permitting timelines and reducing litigation?
Sure thing. Thank you for the question, Congresswoman. Early engagement, early and meaningful engagement with the communities and tribal nations that are going to be impacted by any particular mining project is probably the #1 best practice that can help to, make projects go a lot smoother. It helps to address any concerns that the community has. It also helps to the mining company to incorporate the concerns as early as possible in the process. So before the detailed engineering, before a lot of the work to get the financing starts, they can begin to address the concerns, whether it's about water sources or particular sacred spaces that could get impacted. And so I think it's a win-win for the community and the industry to start as early as possible.
Thank you. There are ways to make sure America can access the critical minerals we need while ensuring that tribes and local communities are respected and see the benefits of the mines in their backyards. From what I'm hearing today, that's a shared goal, but unfortunately, it's not really what we're seeing play out under this administration. For just one example, just this June, EXIM, the Export-Import Bank, loaned a gold mine in Nevada $50 million in taxpayer dollars. I'm not opposed to federal support for industries that will truly be beneficial for the American people, but if you could give your perspective on this, has gold ever been on the USGS critical minerals list? Does it appear on the recently released draft 2025 critical minerals list?
No, it has not, and it is not.
So this isn't a case of using taxpayer money to secure an at-risk critical mineral and make our supply chain safer. In fact, according to USGS, the United States is already a net exporter of gold. So Dr. Feldges, who does this benefit? If taxpayers are helping foot the bill for this mine, will they see a return on that investment?
Well, right now, gold is at record prices. I think, every few days it sets a new high for all-time high for the price of gold. So companies are not really having a hard time developing new gold mines or financing their gold mines. So by using some of the Export-Import Bank's resources to fund a gold mine, first of all, it's not on the critical mineral list. Second of all, you're taking that money away from other more critical projects that it could be working on, whether it be lithium, either domestically or internationally, or other projects that need the support much more than a gold mine does.
We as Congress approved billions of dollars to invest in mineral production through the Big Ugly Bill, all supposedly to secure critical minerals. However, instead of utilizing this opportunity to establish a sustainable, resilient, and transparent mining industry, the Trump administration is excluding the public from development decisions through rushed 14-day mine permits and investing taxpayer money in gold mines to fill the $4.5 trillion hole that his tax cuts created in our budget. There's work we need to do to secure our critical mineral supply chains. I am absolutely here to work on that, but this is not it. I yield back.
Thank you very much. Representative Begich from the great state of Alaska, you're up for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My first question to Ms. Strusacker, understanding our national balance sheet is such an important objective, and I really appreciated your opening remarks focused on the importance of inventorying that national balance sheet through exploration. Can you talk a little bit more about the way in which you think that we should approach a sort of national, this is a national priority, not just for critical minerals, but for all base metals, rare earths, critical minerals, and precious metals, and how we would go about doing that?
Thank you, Congressman, for the question. I think a key element of capitalizing upon this nation's mineral endowment is to eliminate the cloud of uncertainty that has hung over this industry for as long as I can remember, for the last 30 years, which has been a three-pronged attack through legislative attempts to gut the mining law, administrative rules and regulations to constrain the ability of people to get on potentially mineralized land and conduct exploration, and then most recently this problem that's developed out of the Rosemont decision that also casts a cloud on the mining law. So removing those uncertainties and confirming that the mining law guarantees the security of land tenure that companies need to make the hundreds of millions of dollars of investment that it takes to discover a mineral deposit and then $1 billion investment to build a mine is going to be critical to capitalizing upon the private sector's ability to work with the country to discover the minerals that are going to help relieve our dependency on China.
Thank you. And next question to Mr. Smith. You mentioned capital markets just a moment ago as it relates to seabed mining, but even with bankable feasibility studies, many land-based mining projects either don't receive financial support or must finance at near impossible financing terms. What do you think Congress could do to help mitigate or bridge that gap to ensure that more mining projects receive rational financing terms to proceed?
Congressman, I think when you evaluate projects and you look at the potential that they can bring to the market and the economics they can bring, and you look at the strategic role that that plays with regards to the supply of metals, what would be helpful is some form of guarantee or support showing that the government views this project as an essential component of what is needed to fulfill the strategy of the government and the goals of the government, and to provide the financiers with at least some level of support should things not turn out the way they need to. One of the instances, for example, that we're looking at the moment, we find ourselves in a catch-22. We need to reach a certain stage before we'll be able to raise the capital to build the mining ship, for example. However, if we could get some form of guarantee from the government that if we build the mining ship ahead of the permissions, that we can get the financing and build it, and should, for whatever reason, our project not get to where it is, that the finances at least have a soft landing in this case. But that is all viewed with regards to the risk profile associated with that. If we look at that specific case, if we do build the mining ship, we know of a number of projects that could come online, and any one of those could be the company that utilizes it, and that would kickstart things. So I think providing that sort of assurance, almost an insurance policy that the financiers who get in early provide the companies the kind of early support that they need. And if it does go south for reasons beyond our control, at least there's a softer landing than just an outright loss would be helpful.
Thank you. And the final question for Dr. Feldges. Dr. Feldges, you mentioned gold a moment ago as being recently added to the critical minerals list. Are you aware, because you mentioned the increase in price recently, dramatic increase, I might add. Are you aware that central banks around the world have been significantly increasing their gold reserve holdings?
I'm not familiar with the actions of other central banks.
They have, and the reason I ask the question, I bring up the issue, is because I think it's important for us to recognize that it isn't only the industrial potential uses of a particular mineral that makes it strategic or critical, and the recognition worldwide that gold acts as a fundamental reserve and a backstop against fiat currency is, I think, worthy of consideration for inclusion in the critical minerals list. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you very much. Next up, Representative Rivas for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for recognizing me. Dr. Feldges, thank you for your service to this country and your expertise in this field. I wanted to emphasize the importance of community input during the permitting process for hazardous practices such as coal mining. During the Obama administration, Secretarial Order 3338 was instituted. It paused coal leasing until the Department of Interior completed a programmatic environmental impact statement of the federal coal program and the impact it has on communities that carry the burden of harmful pollution from the coal industry. Can you discuss the importance of Secretarial Order 3338?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Congresswoman. That secretarial order was designed to allow us to do a full review of the health and economic impacts of the coal program. That type of review had not been done for decades. I think since the early 80s, I believe, was the last time something like that was done. Had that been allowed to continue, that would have been completed a long time ago, and I think we'd have those answers. And we'd also have a lot more input from local communities as to what the coal program, what impact it's having on their lives, not just economically, but also in terms of the health impacts of coal mining and coal burning, and also climate impacts.
So then, my next question was about the communities being impacted and if they've had input, have the communities that have carried the burden of this environmental harm and public health, have they had their voices heard in this process?
As a overall programmatic issue, not really. We've certainly looked at individual mine proposals as they come up, whether it's for leasing or expansion of a mine. We go through, or the Biden administration went through the NEPA process and made sure that we had community input in the scoping, and then also put out a draft environmental impact statement. We would receive comments on those, and then we would respond to those comments. And in many cases, those draft environmental impact statements were critically important for identifying issues that were not familiar to the agency beforehand, or for allowing the agency to make changes into what the conditions of approval might be for a project. Right now, the administration is working to do away with draft environmental impact statements, so they go right from a scoping to final, and it's not clear whether communities would ever get input into this process and whether that input would ever be responded to.
Yeah, so the communities wouldn't even have access to that draft statement to provide any feedback or input on that.
That's correct.
So yesterday, 65 categorical exemptions were published in the Federal Register that will further append the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. One of the categorical exceptions allows for a short-term mineral energy or geophysical investigation that may require cross-country travel by vehicles and equipment. If bills like H.R. 4068 are passed, what will happen to the livelihoods of communities that have carried the burden of hazardous coal mining for decades?
Well, it's hard to say exactly what will happen because it's going to be a case-by-case basis on what the project is. But certainly by making automatically making these projects subject to a categorical exclusion, you reduce the potential for communities to weigh in on specific projects. So generally, if there's a categorical exclusion for something, the communities won't even know that something is about to happen until it starts happening. So at least with an environmental assessment, which can still be done very quickly, that is announced beforehand that the review is taking place, and then the community is able to weigh in with their thoughts on it. And it might be that it's a completely harmless activity that should go ahead, and that can be done very quickly. But if there are special circumstances or other issues that need to be addressed, they would have the chance to have their voices heard.
Yeah, so we're basically just getting rid of any community input in this process, unfortunately.
I'm afraid that's the way it's trending right now, yes.
Okay, well, thank you, and I yield my time.
Thank you very much. Representative Hageman from the great state of Wyoming, up for 5.
Thank you. I am proud to report that Wyoming has been the leading coal-producing state since 1986. And in 2024, Wyoming produced 191 million tons of coal and shipped 171 million tons to 26 different states. Wyoming produces about 40% of the nation's coal and about 85% of all federal coal production. The U.S. demand for reliable and affordable energy is increasing every single day, and that includes the demand for coal. Through the President's executive order reinvigorating America's beautiful clean coal industry and the recently passed One Big Beautiful Bill Act, this is one of the most pro-coal governments that we've seen in quite some time. This marks a 180-degree turn from the energy poverty policies of the Biden and Obama administration, something that you seem to be advocating for, Dr. Felgus, a continuation of those energy poverty actions, and the Democrat-led Congresses which passed the IRA and other very harmful laws. The Coal Act codifies key aspects of President Trump's executive order. It nullifies the DOI Secretarial Order 3338, which placed a moratorium on new federal coal leases, and it expedites the leasing process for qualified applications. The bill requires slight changes and updates to reflect the changing regulatory and legal landscape of federal coal policy and to integrate other positive aspects of the President's executive order. H.R. 280, the Coal Act, focuses on two key aspects: eliminating the federal coal moratoriums and expediting coal leasing. I'm going to direct my question to Mr. Ditai, who has been a fabulous asset for the state of Wyoming and the country as a whole in terms of providing affordable and reliable energy and other mining products. And Mr. Ditai, since Wyoming is the largest coal producer in the nation and the vast majority of our coal is federal, what impacts do federal moratoriums have for our nation's grid and power needs?
Thank you, Representative Hageman. It's nice to see you again. It has a tremendous effect because, as we talked about a little bit earlier about projected demand, we need an all-that-works strategy, and that includes coal, gas, and nuclear. And in order to provide those coal needs, I mean, the demand's not going away. And I find it interesting in the course of the discussions we hear, oh, coal's dying. If the demand truly weren't there, why are we even talking about a moratorium? We have a moratorium in place because folks want to keep the resource in the ground for whatever their reasons. But the demand is there, and it's going to grow. And in order for us to meet that demand, you have to have access to the resource. You have to have access to the coal. You have to be able to lease coal. And the leasing process takes, on average, about 11 years. About 4.5 years is spent on NEPA. We have not had major leasing activity in this country for the last 10 to 15 years, and we're behind the curve. So, you put that resource off limits, you're putting our grid in jeopardy. You're putting our ability to meet the projected demand. We're not going to be able to do it.
Well, in 2016, Obama's Interior Secretary Sally Jewell placed a moratorium on new leasing. That moratorium was lifted the following year, only to be reimposed in 2021 by the Biden administration. In 2022, a federal judge reimposed the Obama-era moratorium, and in 2023, the Biden administration announced its intent to initiate yet another EIS to evaluate the impacts of maintaining or revoking the coal moratorium, despite the fact that no such EIS was required. Now, I have had the opportunity to visit the coal mines in Wyoming, and to state that they are well-run, well-operated, and in compliance with the federal and state regulations is an understatement. I also would invite members of the committee and others who may have skepticism about coal and our ability to environmentally mine such resource to come to Wyoming and actually see the reclamation and the habitat that we provide for a variety of wildlife species and things like that. But this whipsawing obviously has an impact upon our company's ability to operate. Mr. Detai, would you just briefly describe the impact that these changing policies have and why it's important that we get certainty in this area?
Well, absolutely, Representative Hageman, the industry thrives on certainty. Our customers thrive on certainty because we have to send our coal somewhere. And when you have utilities looking, for the last 15 years not being certain whether the coal resource was even going to be available, that impacts their decisions. And they're not planning year to year, they're planning decade to decade. And so, yes, absolutely, you need certainty. And I want to also quickly point out, we've heard a lot about public input. And I think it's really kind of interesting that throughout this discourse about moratoriums and the Clean Power Plan and curbing coal use, there's been a lot of opportunity for public input. And, when you go to the state of Wyoming, people of Wyoming have been ignored, completely ignored for the last 15 years when their input is given on whether we should keep our coal resources viable and whether or not we need a moratorium on this. Yeah, you're right. You look at community involvement. Absolutely, community input for Wyoming has been ignored.
I think that's a very good point, Mr. Detai. Thank you for being here to provide that valuable testimony, and I yield back.
Thank you very much. Before we go to the next member, I am going to ask unanimous consent that the following letter from the American Exploration and Mining Association expressing support for H.R. 1366 and H.R. 4090 be entered into the hearing record. Without objection, so ordered. Next up is Representative Downing from the great state of Montana.
Mr. Chair, thank you for holding this hearing, and thank you for allowing me to once again wave on. Coal and critical minerals are vital to America's energy security, economic strength, and national defense. And communities in the West rely on these industries for good-paying jobs. Our entire nation depends on them for affordable power. Excuse me about that. And the raw materials that fuel modern life. So I'm going to start with Mr. Detai. Federal delays and moratoria in coal leasing have created significant uncertainty for producers and local economies. Can you explain how H.R. 280 would restore certainty, support coal production, and strengthen U.S. energy security?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Congressman. Yeah, absolutely. The resource has to be available. And, for planning purposes, for utilities to know what they're going to want to put on the grid, they have an obligation to put the lowest cost, dispatch the lowest cost resource. Wyoming coal, when gas prices, our magic number is about $3. That's when Wyoming coal is competitive. We've seen a couple of years ago when gas prices spiked to over $9, we couldn't get enough coal out of Wyoming to meet the demand for utilities. So the demand is certainly there. And, we lost about 30 million tons of production that year because the railroads couldn't move what the utilities needed. So what I think that says is that the utilities are looking at this and they're saying, we've got to have these resources available. And so, the amount of uncertainty that you've injected by playing ping pong with the leasing process has left companies up in the air, has left utilities up in the air, not knowing where their fuel's going to come from. So you get rid of the lease, quit playing ping pong with this stuff, and let the market decide. And I would add that because we've heard about the market's deciding where coal is. Well, we've all read our Milton Friedman, and, a market implies choices. And when you have one of your choices that's been overtaxed, overregulated, and in the case of the BLM Buffalo RMP outlawed, that's not really a market. And finally, we're seeing some correction in that, with the lowering of the federal royalty rate. At the state level, we lowered the severance tax on federal coal, and with some of the regulatory breathing room that we're getting right now, you've made the Wyoming coal, Powder River Basin coal, much more competitive in the market, and that's going to benefit consumers when utilities have to decide what they're going to dispatch. And it all gets back to the point where you have to keep the resource available.
Right. So moving on, so HR 4068 codifies categorical exclusions under NEPA to accelerate coal projects. Why is this step critical to maintaining reliable coal power and meeting domestic energy demand? Mr. Detay.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Again, I think it comes back to, it takes 11 years to get a coal lease, and our estimates are about 4.5%. 4.5 years of that is spent on NEPA work. You have agencies doing duplicative work. You have it's become a process where it's protracted. It's become litigious, and there's got to be a way to streamline this a little bit because, again, we've had no real leasing activity for over a decade. We're going to need that coal online, and it's going to come up on us sooner than we think.
Right.
And so, anything that we can do to streamline the process, and it's not about cutting the public out, and it's not about cutting corners on environmental safety. I mean, NEPA doesn't do anything for the environment. Right. It's what the agencies do and the regulatory bodies do. It's what the Wyoming Department of Environmental Quality does, because we manage we have primacy over our coal program. But we've got to shorten the timeline. There are ways that you can do it. I mean, can the agencies cooperate and use one NEPA process instead of doing three because we have multiple agencies overseeing a lease? And there are ways you can do it, but I think this is it's certainly on the right track that we have to streamline the process. We've got to get this stuff done quickly.
Thank you. Moving on, Ms. Strusacker. The Rosemont decision has introduced major uncertainty for mining operations on federal lands. How would HR 1366 provide the clarity necessary for coal and hard rock projects and protect the U.S. mineral supply chain?
Thank you for the question. Well, first of all, 1366 deals only with hard rock mining. It wouldn't have anything to do with coal.
My mistake.
But what it would do for hard rock mining is it would give operators the flexibility to locate both mining claims and mill sites on the same parcel of land without considering whether the land is mineral or mineralized. That might seem like a silly thing, but the misinterpretation of the mining law in the Rosemont decision functionally changed the mining law, at least in the Ninth Circuit, that requires federal land managers to consider the mineral characteristics of the land during the NEPA process and during the plan approval process to determine that the lands that the company wants to use for mine waste storage show evidence of being mineralized. And this would eliminate that requirement and add much needed clarity. And because the Rosemont court just simply misunderstood the mining law.
Well, thank you for that answer. Unfortunately, I've run out of time. Mr. Chair, I yield.
Thank you very much. Before we go on to myself, we're hoping we can get a ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Huffman here. That's doesn't look like, okay. I've got a couple of things I want to enter into the record before I start my questions. I'm going to ask unanimous consent that the following September 20th, 2024 fact sheet from the Biden White House highlighting the Biden administration's actions on critical minerals, noting the approval or support for only 4 upstream mining projects in the United States over the previous 4 years. Without objection, so ordered. And then the other one, I ask unanimous consent that the following letter from the Center of the American Experiment expressing support for HR 4090 be entered into the record. Without objection, so ordered. So now I will begin my 5 minutes of questioning. Let's see here. 1 second. Here we go. Found my spot. Ms. Strusacker, in your testimony, you highlighted the importance of exploration for minerals. What do you believe is the best way for Congress to incentivize more hard rock mineral exploration?
Thank you, Chairman Stauber, for that question. Expediting and incentivizing mineral exploration is, I think, the most important thing that Congress can do to ultimately increase domestic mineral production, because you can't build a mine if you haven't found the mineral deposit. So what can be done are first to streamline permitting for exploration projects that involve well-known activities like building roads, building drill pads, and expedite that by increasing the acreage that the BLM and the Forest Service can authorize from 5 acres right now on BLM land to, I would suggest, 20 acres. Forest Service doesn't have that notice process at all, so we need to extend the notice process onto National Forest System lands. Secondly, I think there are a number of things we could look to in some of our partner nations like Canada and Australia that have programs in place to incentivize mineral exploration by allowing people to invest in junior mining companies and take a tax deduction, for example, for money spent on mineral exploration. There are things that you could do to provide perhaps grants to companies that are looking for minerals. The companies right now are having a really difficult time raising capital for exploration.
Or incentivizing businesses and industry to relocate using American mined minerals, correct?
That's a terrific idea as well, yes, yes.
That was it. That was in the One Big Beautiful Bill.
Right, right.
So do exploration activities under the mining law require reclamation?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Can you explain?
Sure.
Or give examples?
Yes, okay. So, for example, the BLM regulations require that before exploration work can start on the ground, the operator has to provide financial assurance or a reclamation bond. And that's in BLM's surface management regulations at 43 CFR 3809.
So before they can begin the exploration, they have to give financial assurances to the government that reclamation at the end of the process will be taken care of.
Yeah, and I should clarify that the money that they have to put up front, and basically it's a bond that the state and federal government can use, is calculated on the assumption that the government has to do the work. So it's not the cost of the company to do the work, but there's quite an inflation on top of what would actually be required on the ground for the federal government or state government to actually manage the work and hire contractors to do it. So it's a very robust bonding program.
And do you believe that our acquired federal lands are being fully utilized for mineral development?
Oh, gosh, no. They are being completely underutilized. I'm going to lace up my geologist boots here for just a minute to tell you that there are many, many mineral deposits or prospective mineral deposits on the nation's acquired lands. And as I mentioned a minute ago, we have about 64 million acres of acquired lands in this country, and a minuscule 50,000 acres are under lease right now for either exploration or development. And the reason for that is that the leasing program that is in place on acquired land simply doesn't work because it's not set up to recognize the geologic realities of looking for hard rock minerals. It has time limits, it has acreage limits that just don't work. Now, Secretary Burgum has addressed those, at least on a provisional basis, but more needs to be done.
Would Mr. Fallon's legislation help address the issue?
It absolutely would, because right now it's unclear that, for instance, lithium on some acquired lands could be leased and developed. So absolutely, it's an important component of capitalizing more on the mineral resources on our acquired lands.
So what are some of the ways that we can streamline mining on acquired lands in the future?
Well, my suggestion is that you think about making them subject to location under the mining law, and so that they would come under a self-executing claim system as opposed to a lease system. A lease system kind of requires you to already know where the minerals are so that you can then apply for the lease. And that works in oil and gas, which are in broad, well-understood sedimentary basins. But it doesn't work very well for hard rock mineral deposits that have a far more specific geology and aerial location. So that would be one thing. If you feel that's a bridge too far, then to overhaul the leasing program so that you align the interests of the lessor, the federal government, and the lessee, the company, so that they both are headed in the right direction. The way that leasing program is set up right now, it makes mineral discovery very, very difficult. And so you could look, for example, to the leasing program that the state of Utah has on its school trust lands, which puts the state of Utah and the mineral lessee on the same side of the equation so that they both want to succeed and the state wants them to succeed. I mean, we hardly produce anything from our federal lands right now, or from our acquired lands. And that's not because they aren't mineralized. It's just because the leasing system is such a barrier to exploration and development.
Thank you very much for your answer. I really appreciate that. I am out of time because I could ask, we all could ask many more, but to the witnesses, I want to thank you for your valuable time and insight into this, into the critical minerals and mining. Appreciate it. The members of the subcommittee may have some additional questions for you as witnesses, and we will ask you to respond to these in writing. Under Committee Rule 3, members of the committee must submit questions to the committee clerk by 5 p.m. on Monday, September 8th. The hearing record will be held open for 10 business days for these responses. Did you want to enter in something in there? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to ask unanimous consent to enter these items into the record. A letter of opposition to H.R. 4018 from the Surfrider Foundation, a letter of opposition to the Mining Regulatory Clarity Act from the Outdoor Alliance, a letter of opposition to H.R. 4090 and H.R. 1366 from the National Parks Conservation Alliance, and a fact sheet from Defend Brooks Range on the economic and mineral realities of the Ambler Road project.
Without objection. If there is no further business, without objection, the committee stands adjourned.